So why don't you just give yourself a brief introduction to your background so people know who you are if they don't already.
Yeah, my name is Chase Hughes. I did 20 years in the U.S. military, retired in 2019, then did some behavioral stuff, wrote a few books that became bestsellers, and I have a YouTube channel where we break down people's behaviors and stuff. But most of my life I've been obsessed with how people are made to do things that are not in their best interest, whether that is confessing to a crime in an interrogation or providing some kind of intelligence, or is it maybe getting talked into a cult or something like that. So that's always fascinated me from the standpoint of, in interrogations, what can a person be made to do, and how long does it take to get to the desired result?
And you are an expert in psychological warfare and psychological operations.
Yeah.
In what capacity have you worked for the government in this kind of realm?
So the first job that I ever had was literally just scraping rust off of a ship. So if anybody's out there right now and you're thinking about joining the Navy, don't let your recruiter tell you to go undesignated, because it sounds good. They're like, oh, you can go in there and then you can pick whatever job you want. You're not designated. So I did that for like 2.5 years. And then 2001, a friend of mine got killed on the USS Cole. And there was this was the bombing that took place in the Gulf of Yemen on September 11th. And his name's Craig Weberly. And I read all these intelligence reports that said the agents didn't develop contacts well enough. We had all these failures that took place on the ground. And I had already been studying body language. And I just got into body language because I was rejected by a girl when I was like 19. And I was stationed in Pearl Harbor, so we were down in Waikiki, and basically she just says, no, thank you. Like really mean, like right to my face. And it hurt. It was like a heart impact to me. And I went home that night and typed into Google, how to tell when girls like you. And I printed out this big ass stack of paper. And the more I learned about reading human behavior, the more I could see like everybody is suffering. Everybody that you meet is insecure. And you start being able to see all these hidden insecurities. And just coming to that realization of everybody that you meet is hiding some kind of insecurity in some way. And it didn't make me feel better than anybody else. It just made me feel like, oh, they're screwed up like I am. And so I think I had social anxiety, and that kind of made behavior addictive to me because I could kind of see behind the curtain, and it let me know that everybody else was kind of screwed up.
So at that point, you decided to get into actually studying neuroscience, and I think you did some sort of classes at Harvard and Duke, right?
I did a bunch of psychology classes when I was in the military, and went to a university that was kind of like, if you pay your military money, they pass you kind of a thing. But after I retired from the military, that's when I started. The education was free, essentially. So I did a postgraduate program for neuroscience at Harvard, and then I did the standard neuroscience and medical neuroscience program at Duke University.
Oh, wow. And at what point did you start to get these jobs working with the military intelligence agencies and stuff like this? And is there like an official organization or a compartmented area of the government that only does psychological operations?
There are. That's the U.S. Army. So the U.S. Army is kind of subdivided. You have like the Special Operations Command, and then you have a bunch of stuff under there, and Psyops falls under the Special Operations Command. So it's mostly Army. When you think about any Psyops, you're going to think Army. That's when the Army is involved 100%. So that branch, I didn't start until I was a civilian. I got out. I'd been developing all these programs my whole life to try to improve all of our intelligence training. And I realized maybe halfway through my career, and you can imagine when somebody says like, oh, this is military grade.
Yeah.
If you talk to somebody who is in the military, that's the opposite. Like we're thinking like, oh, that's a piece of shit. But because I thought like all of this intelligence training has to be cool. It's got to be like Jason Bourne level persuasion and influence training and stuff. Come to find out, taking the class, even going to like recruiting school to recruit people, the training was like, give people firm handshake, look them in the eye, Use their name when you're talking to them. Maybe touch them on the shoulder every once in a while. It was like Dale Carnegie.
Right.
That's all it was.
Right.
And I was stunned that was the best we had to offer. That was the best that we could give an intelligence operative. And that was the reason that, we had some of those terror attacks. So I started training Psyops in 2019 was the first time. And that just training Psyops, they soaked it up so much because they were starving for some kind of training like that for so long, because they've been going off of these PowerPoints that say, like, get to know the person you're talking to. And that's it. It doesn't say how. How do you do that? How do you get them to connect to you? It just says, well, get to know them. Ask open-ended questions. Like the most basic stuff. It was like all their training would be like something ChatGPT would just spit out. If you say, give me training on how to connect to somebody, it would just be the most generic thing you could imagine.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make that better. And there's so much out there. And I just looked at, if I could go on a tangent here for a second. Mm-hmm. So you've heard of the Milgram experiment?
No.
Let me walk you through it. Okay. This is 1962 at Yale University. And they do a study. They put an ad in the paper and they say, we're doing a study on learning and psychology. And if you come in and volunteer for this study, we're going to give you like a lunch voucher or something like that. So all these people volunteered. So let's say you're doing the study and you take it and you go up in this hallway, you meet this guy, the guy in the lab coat, and there's another volunteer there, and you draw straws. The other guy draws the learner straw, and you draw a straw that says teacher on it. And they say, all right, you're going to sit down here, and I'll summarize it. But the guy's in the room next to you with the door shut, and you're going to sit down at this machine, and you're going to read this quiz, and for every question he gets wrong, you're going to shock his ass. You're going to deliver an electric shock. So you walk in there with him to begin the experiment. You watch him getting strapped down into this machine. And they even let you test the shocker on yourself.
I have heard of this. I read about this somewhere.
Yeah. And every time they get a question wrong, you shock them. But not only that, you're going to grab that little knob and move the voltage up. So if you move the knob all the way to the far right, it says XXX danger severe shock. So you start the experiment. The guy says he's got a heart condition, and you can hear him screaming when you hit this little shock button through the wall. You can hear him go, ah, ah. You can hear these little screams. And every time you're moving it up, and sooner or later he says, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to continue. I'm out of here. I have a heart condition. I told you I had a heart condition. I want to leave. I want to stop right now. And all these people would kind of like turn back to the guy in the lab coat, like, what do I do? And the guy in the lab coat is almost every time would say something as simple as, it's important that you continue, or the experiment requires that you continue. So they keep going and keep going and keep going. They're up to like 300 volts now. And at around 350 volts, every sound in the room across the wall stops. No more sound. And they shock. And then he stops answering questions altogether. There's no response to these questions because he's pushing this little button that indicates like A, B, C, D. And you turn around to the guy in the lab coat again. The guy in the lab coat says, any non-answer must be treated as an incorrect answer. Please continue. And they kept going. And they kept going, shocking what they assumed, which was an actor. The guy in the other room's an actor. Mm-hmm. But they assumed that this is a real person. They're suffering and maybe unconscious at this point. They wanted to stop. They asked to stop. So before this experiment started, all these psychologists got together and they said, how many people are going to go through with this? And they said 0.07%, I think was the answer. They said anybody that would go through with this is a psychopath and wants to hurt other human beings. So the experiment concluded 67% of people went all the way. All the way. And 250 volts is enough to kill you based on amps, but 100% of people went up to 250 volts. 100%.
Wow.
And it's been replicated so many times. It's been over and over. People have replicated it in different environments and different changes. Some of the experiments, they physically made the participant hold the person's hand down on a metal plate that was shocking them. And they went back and they said, this is a study of obedience to authority, because this was during the Nuremberg trials going on. And with all of the former Nazis saying, I was just following orders. I was just doing what I was told to do.
Right.
So Dr. Milgram, his parents were Jewish. He does this experiment. Will people just do what they're told to do? And they thought that this was all about authority. So people are struggling right now. All over the internet, you can see stuff like sales training mastery. Here's the influence mastery. If I can, in 40 minutes, I can talk a total stranger into committing murder, wouldn't you think that that's harder than selling him a car? And those people in the Milgram experiment, there was no secret hypnotic technique. They didn't inject them with some LSD or something before the thing happened. They didn't have some secret handshake, or they touch them a certain way or hypnotize them. No techniques, no methods. It was just how responsive our mammalian part of our brain is to authority. But they missed one element of that, which we can talk about later. But that's how incredible authority really is when it comes to influence and persuasion in human behavior. It's everything.
That leads me to a little bit what we were talking to before we started recording this podcast, talking about certain folks that see things going on in the world and automatically assume that this thing is some sort of psyop, right? Or some sort of psychological, like, for example, the guy Crooks, I think his name was, that tried to shoot Trump and got killed immediately afterwards, and then gets his identity scrubbed from the internet. Like, or you even have the guy who just just murdered the healthcare CEO 2 weeks ago or a week ago, whatever it was. So many people love to jump online to immediately, like, this guy was a Manchurian candidate, or this guy was somehow co-opted by somebody in intelligence or the FBI or whatever and manipulated to do this. And it makes a lot of sense, and it's easy to draw connections to that kind of thing. But how much of that do you think is real that goes on today in this day and age?
I think it probably still goes on. But I want you to, here's what the mistake a lot of those people will make, and I hope I don't piss them off by saying this, but it's not about the technique. A lot of people think, oh, you need all this training. I'm going to inject this person. I'm going to do secret messages into their brain using some machine or something like that. If I'm an authority in a person's life, and I say, hey, man, you know what you need to do? You need to go do that. You go do that thing to that person. That's all it really takes. Because it's not about the right skills. It's about the ability to select the right target, or to select the right candidate to perform the action. This goes all the way back to Bobby Kennedy, RFK's dad.
Right.
And who was killed by a guy named Sirhan in San Francisco. And I believe that was on purpose. And I think that was very heavily influenced. I think he was influenced. He has no memory of the entire event. I went to the prison to sit down with Sirhan a few years ago.
You've probably heard me talk about metabolic health, cellular energy, and ketosis ad nauseum on this podcast. And I stay in ketosis not only by maintaining my diet, but also by using ketone supplements. And there's a company that makes a special product that jumpstarts your body into ketosis with natural energy and no sugar. And that's Ketone IQ High Performance Energy. They recently launched Ketone IQ Plus Caffeine, which includes caffeine from green tea. And dare I say it, it tastes great. I use Ketone IQ as a meal replacement, especially during a long day of work or even during a podcast when I can eat breakfast before, but I'm obviously going to miss lunch because we're sitting here for 3 hours. So the Ketone IQ helps jumpstart my body into ketosis. So I'm burning ketones for fuel, which keeps me less hungry and gives me far more energy and clarity. I also use it in conjunction with creatine for a pre-workout. Ketone IQ comes in a pouch or a shot that I take once a day. It provides fuel that is produced by the body when it's pushed to its limits or is starved of carbs and sugar. It has no salt, gluten, or artificial flavors. It is this company that is trusted by the NFL, NBA, Olympians, and the U.S. military. Very impressive. And now our lucky listeners can save 30% off your first subscription order and receive a free 6-pack of Ketone IQ by going to ketone.com/Danny Jones. Again, save 30% off your first subscription order and receive a free 6-pack of Ketone IQ by going to ketone.com/Danny Jones. It's linked below. Now back to the show.
I booked a flight, got a hotel, had all these forms filled out, walked in the front door, handed over my driver's license to sign in and all that stuff. And they said, he's sick. He's not feeling well. He's sick. So I never got a chance to talk to him. But if you just look at it in terms of, am I selecting the right person to do this? It's 1,000 times easier. And you don't need some giant agency who's doing this. It's often not some agency. It's usually a group of people with a special interest.
Interesting.
So you don't need 50 years of hypnosis experience, even though there was most likely a hypnotist involved with Sirhan. His name was Dr. Joylin West.
Oh, yeah, Jolly West.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm familiar with him. I don't know if you're familiar with Tom O'Neill's book, Chaos.
I haven't read
it. It's riveting. He dives through all the background of the Manson murders. And he even interviews his probation officer and learns all about how Jolly West was tied to that free clinic in San Francisco. And Sidney Gottlieb, and there was this free clinic in it was called the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic in San Francisco that he did his research on it, and it was fully funded by the CIA. Yeah. And they were doing experiments with people with LSD and amphetamines to see how that would affect people's brains and how you could control them. And that's interesting too. This ties right into Charles Manson because like
Midnight Climax.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, there was Operation Chaos and Midnight Climax that was going on at the same exact time.
And that was all under Sidney Gottlieb, who's the OSS director, I think, at that time. Was that his position? I think it was.
No. Was he?
I think he was.
He was the head of MK Ultra. I know that.
Yeah. But I think he ran that and Hoover was kind of a sideways involved in that. Mm. And I have the only existing, I have the digital copies of all those letters between him and this guy named Dr. George Estabrooks at Colgate University, who were involved and had developed a plan, which I don't think has ever been released by the government, but I found it in Dr. Estabrooks' personal effects and his files. And I'll send you a copy. You can put it in the show notes if you want to. But they had a plan to hypnotize, and Dr. Estabrooks was a classic hypnotist. But he says, I could split someone's personality in such and such amount of time and make them do anything. I can make them forget who they know. And he says, I can do it to an Army officer. Here's the step-by-step guide. I'll send you all of this. I'll even send you the step-by-step guide that he produced.
Do you remember any of it?
The steps?
Yeah.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
What was it?
Well, wait, let me finish this real quick. So the guy has this plan sent off to J. Edgar Hoover involving this other guy named Dr. Milton Erickson, who's like the grandfather of hypnotherapy. He's the reason that hypnotherapy is accepted by the American Medical Association. So, and this other person, Margaret Mead, who's involved right now. And they have a plan to capture and hypnotize a German submarine captain, give him a split personality, send him back into his own harbor where he'll torpedo all of his own ships. And this was a legit plan that they were working on. They had all these steps laid out. So they've been doing this for a long time, a very long time. Wow. So what
you are the steps of splitting somebody's personality.
Steps are easy. So I'll give you the more advanced version because that was kind of rudimentary what they had back then. Mm-hmm. But I'll give you the documents to put in the PDF or whatever in the link down below. So our personalities are very fragile, and most people don't realize it. And if you have an authority figure, you can split a personality. So let's imagine that I'm a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and you come to me and you say, "Hey, I've been having this anxiety or I've been having a little feeling of depression or loneliness or something." Mm-hmm. And I say, well, have you ever had a instance where one part of you wants to do one thing and the other part doesn't really do that? And 100% of people are going to say yes to that. 100%. But you'll say, actually, when it comes to cheesecake or something, I don't want to eat the cheesecake because I know it's going to make me fat, but I'll go eat the cheesecake. We'll take it as a simple thing. And I'll say, all right, so what if that part of you had a name, what would the name of that part be? And you're like, oh, I don't know, Michael. And you made up a name. I'm like, all right, so what? Let's go back and forth. Like, what does Michael want? Okay, Michael wants this, but what does Danny want? And then, so I get you to have this dialogue about yourself in the third person, but you're not sure what camera angle you're looking at yourself from, right? And if I ask you just a simple question, like, let me just ask you and answer this honestly. Like, if you picture, did you shower this morning or last night?
Last night.
So you just look up and to your left. So you pictured yourself in the third person.
Yeah.
Why did you picture yourself in the third person? Who was observing you? Do you think that was Michael? So I start going down this path of doing this. And then I say, you know what? I think the best way to clear this up is to give you the standard exam. This is the standard psychological exam for multiple personality disorder. And hold on.
Whoa.
So the exam I give you.
You might think I'm lying to you because my hair's wet, but I jumped in the pool before I came here. So that's why my hair looks wet. I'm not lying. I'm sure you can tell if I'm lying.
So I give you this exam and it's totally made up. It doesn't even have to be an official document. And let's say it's got 10 or 12 questions on there. Do you feel like this sometimes? Do you feel like that sometimes? Do you feel like that sometimes? No matter what you score, I say, wow, you're in the 99th percentile for having a multiple personality disorder. And the best way that we can deal with this is to allow those parts of yourself to have a conversation with each other. So just a doctor misdiagnosing you creates a split.
Wow.
That's 30 minutes. That's not even the hypnosis yet. And then we get into hypnosis, and hypnosis is proven to work. Dr. David Spiegel at Stanford University is probably the premier researcher for hypnosis. And if I just get into the hypnosis part, I'm gonna just essentially, like I'm hammering a wedge down into a log to split that log apart. That hypnosis is just going to go in there and kind of push this wedge and allow those two beings to get further and further and further apart. Let's identify this person's personalities, their traits and their desires in life and what they want. Let's go to this one. Let's see what Danny wants. So why don't we have Danny and Michael have a conversation really quick? Or would you like them not to talk to each other? So we just start getting, the moment you step down this road, you're creating that part.
Wow.
So they actually use this for therapy. And a friend of mine, Dr. Richard Nongard, wrote a book. I think I wrote the foreword to that book, maybe. But it's called Excellence in Parts Work and Parts Therapy. And Dr. Fritz Perls did this. Virginia Satir did a lot of this stuff with Gestalt therapy. But it's just identifying these parts of yourself and getting familiar with what they want and what each one is, which is good. But the moment you start getting into it, and when I tell you it's pathological, or when I tell you let's say if I was a hypnotist and I didn't have the psychiatric authority and stuff, I could say, you know what if you had a helper in your life who could do things for you? And I could install a helper inside your brain. I could do a very good thing for you, or I could make that helper do really bad stuff. So once we're designing that helper, we decide the morals and ethics and what that helper is willing to do under hypnosis. Then this has been proven since the 40s and 50s.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty cool.
It seems a lot easier than giving people drugs.
It is. But again, you either have to have...
You have to have the right person, though.
It's either a shitload of skill and authority or a lot of skill in finding the right person. Yeah. So finding suggestible people is number one. And I wrote about this in a fiction book. I wrote a fictional book called Phrase 7, which is going to be a TV show pretty soon. And in this book, I use something that's actually real. If you look at somebody who's been happy their whole life, you can start seeing these little crow's feet because they smile a lot. You look at somebody who's socially driven, they raise their eyebrows a lot during conversations. You can see these little lines right here.
I always avoid those people.
Yeah. And like somebody who's angry or mad, you'll have these two little lines that start developing. And this is in the teenage years, you'll start seeing this. And we call it expression etching because it etches onto the face after a pattern of behavior. But what would you do if I told you to make a skeptical facial expression? There it is. So the lower eyelid tightens up right here. Do it one more time so you can get a good zoom in. There we go. So all these wrinkles form down right here. So if you see somebody with a wrinkled lower eyelid, and this is my opinion, I've not tested this scientifically at all, but I have confirmed it with like 5 hypnotists who have confirmed it with thousands and thousands of subjects. And these are...
Sounds scientific enough to me.
I like it. And if you look at, it's even in this book, there's photos of it. And if you look at a person's face and they have super smooth lower eyelids down here, they're, in my mind, they're exponentially more likely to be a suggestible candidate for that thing. And so the bad guy in this fictional book goes to these like comedy hypnosis shows where like people get called up on stage and it's like, oh, the person next to you farted and it smells really bad and that kind of thing. But he will take the number one subject from the hypnosis show and then he doesn't know how to select the right person. So he just goes to the hypnosis show and he picks the most suggestible person and then just follows him out to the parking lot.
So I'm sure you can figure out a bunch of other characteristics or personality traits from somebody based on like different wrinkles that are etched into their face too, right? Like people that are always stressed or depressed have different.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's a hard science.
Right.
And I wouldn't say most things dealing with behavior and psychology are not a hard science, no matter how much people want it to be. It's just, it's like asking Roger Federer where he went to college for tennis. And like, what were your credentials? Where are the studies that you did to win all the tournaments?
Yeah. When you see people in the news, like this guy who just whacked that CEO, do you like do deep dives on them and like their background, try to figure out what their motivations were and try to do like a psychoanalysis of them?
I want to, and I have to stop myself from doing it because I'll go.
Really?
Hard. Yeah. And I'm a very suggestible person, and I will go hard into that, and then I'll get into like the Twitter confirmation bias rabbit hole, which I'm sure you fell into many times. And
it's hard to escape.
It is so hard. And I mean, not just exiting the app, but like the modifications I'm making to the way that I see the world.
It's great that you notice it.
Well, just like I'll be in my office. I wake up at like 4:30 in the morning. So it'll be like before sunrise. And I'm like hunched over my desk, like just doing this. And I can feel like, oh my God, my brain's changing. Like something. Yeah. And I just get out. So I have like app timers on all those things now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like threads on Twitter and comments on YouTube of people that believe that I'm a CIA funded plant. Right, that runs a podcast to run CIA propaganda. Yeah. But at the same time, I believe shit like that about other things in the world. So that gives me a unique perspective of I'm like on both sides of the mirror.
Yeah. And I just published a video day before or yesterday on these drones that are happening right now. And like I just saw a few comments today, like government plant on my channel. Right. So and then somebody else says, it's a video talking about psyops that is psyops. That is a psyop. So like I'm trying to educate people on how to spot psyops, and that's also a psyop. It's so deep. Yeah, man. So I think there's a tendency for a lot of people to tie those. I always imagine those like in the movies, the house of like the crazy schizophrenic who's got maps and photos all over the wall.
Yeah, the Always Sunny guy.
Yeah, yarn and stuff like drawn. Like, I think those people have a tendency to just tie yarn as much as they can to everything that's going on. And it's just like, not every part, granted that stuff happens. Of course that stuff happens. But I don't think every single thing that happens in the news is straight out of some Tom Clancy novel. Yeah. Where there's a million backstories to it.
Yeah. The video that you posted, I think it was yesterday, about the drone. Yeah. The drone was fascinating. It's a new year and a new me, and that's why I'm starting out with Mando's whole body deodorant. Why? It's proven to stop Steve's cheese feet from disturbing our guests. And that's how you know you have a winner. I like to keep Mando's whole body deodorant not only in my shower, but in my go bag when I'm on the run or going to the gym or even leaving town because it's not only a soap, but it's also a deodorant, so it takes up less space and it smells delicious. What makes Mando so different? It's a cleansing bar and it controls your odor for 72 hours, and that's perfect for long hours at work or hiding from the feds. It's safe to use on your pits, package, crack, and feet, and comes in bourbon leather, Clover Woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport.
But Danny, why should I use this over soap alone?
12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor level was a 5 out of 10. With Mando, the odor level was 0 out of 10. Sniff on that, Steve. Mando's so good, you can now get him in Walmart and Target. But for the best deals, go to shopmando.com. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack with code DANNY at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com and use the code DANNY at checkout. And please support the show by telling them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence with Mando from head to toe. It's linked below. Now back to the show. The way you laid it out. And like, I think the consensus is online now. I sent you that video that was from Twitter where the guy was from a private aerospace company saying that these are like, he said that they were aerospace contractor drones that were searching for a rogue nuke. I think he said that went missing in Ukraine or something, and somehow made its way, got smuggled into the U.S. So there's like a warhead somewhere, they think, in New Jersey, and they have these drones that the reason they're flying at night is because they can detect this nuclear energy or gas or something that would be coming from this material.
Oh, because there's not a lot of gamma out in the air, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, for anybody at home right now, we're 2 idiots talking about something.
Yeah, of course. Well, it does make sense that nobody would know about it, right? Like, if you really think about it, like, I'm sure there's a lot of senators and congressmen and, off the cuff FBI agents who won't know what this is, because I'm sure if this is something serious, it's got to be super compartmented. And if it is something like that they're looking for, some sort of weapon they got on the loose that's in, New Jersey, and they're trying to find out what the hell it is, and it's private aerospace that's figuring it out, there's going to be tons of people that are in the government that have no fucking clue what it is. Yeah. So,
and I think there's an element of psyop to a lot of stuff that's going on. If you look, it depends on how you define psyop. Like, is it a government funded thing? Because every commercial, if you watch an infomercial, that's a psyop. They're all just, let me find the target. Let me get them to do what I want them to do. But I think you had a guy on here. I can't remember his name. Super smart guy talking about Havana syndrome.
Yeah, everybody loves that podcast.
Yeah.
There was 2 guys, right?
Yeah.
It was Robert Duncan and then the Russian guy, Len Baer.
Yeah. And Len was a victim of some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I published a paper from a Psyops perspective a year or 2 ago on Havana syndrome. And I'll give you the PDF to throw in the show notes. Mm-hmm. But what I suggested in that paper was, if I wanted to affect mass control, I only need to use a real weapon on 10 to 55, maybe 100 people. And then the sound of that weapon gets replayed on the news, the cricket sound, over and over and over. And then it's so scary to a population, and everyone's so familiar with the sound, that I no longer need the weapon. I just need a speaker. Huh. So I can create what's called a psychogenic illness. And this is very common. So you've been trained for months and months and months. You've been seeing all these people get injured by these weapons with brain damage and confusion, migraine headaches. You're trained to associate that sound with all of those symptoms because it's so much in the news cycle. Mm-hmm. So then at the final stage, you don't need the weapon anymore. You don't need to smuggle in some crazy weapon. You just need
to play the sound and get the symptoms, get the effects by just, wow.
Yeah. And you make it dissociating enough, like where the sound's pretty loud. You can use a device like an LRAD, which you can buy. A civilian can buy an LRAD, a long-range acoustic device. You can buy it online for like $3,500.
Yeah, I read that they used to test these weapons on sailors, on like Navy sailors that were based in Maryland, I think it was, when they were first developing these targeted weapons. I've
used the LRAD many times, not for any weird psyops, but we have them on the bridge wing. So that top left photo right there. Mm-hmm. That is called a bridge wing. So that's on the like where you control a ship. So you have like the bridge or the pilot house where the wheel is, and it's got two little outdoor sections right there. So on Navy ships, those will be on the bridge wing, and that's kind of we don't want to shoot somebody warning system.
Right.
So and it's got a little aiming, like a little red dot sight, and you rotate that thing down. You can use it as kind of an early warning system to tell a boat that they need to turn around.
Oh, wow.
There's one being used by the Navy right there.
Holy shit, dude.
But it is a long-range weapon, and you can almost not even hear it from behind it. It's so quiet, and the cone is so small. And this is probably this photo is probably from 20, maybe 15 years ago. I can tell just by looking at the system, and that he's wearing a flak jacket instead of steel plates.
Yeah, they use it for crowd control too, for sure.
Yeah, but that's an older system.
Yeah.
Now they have something called a sound laser that they use for the exact same thing. But it's not some crazy technology. It's just I'm sending sound through a little laser aperture and down.
Is that what that is right there? New laser at McNary Dam is the latest technology for deterring what? Click on it. For deterring birds?
No. We did have laser guns that looked like an M4 that had a giant battery pack on them. And they were just kind of blinding lasers. So it would shoot out a bazillion little lights. I don't know how they work.
Huh.
I know how to use it.
Right.
But they called it a dazzler. But it wasn't very dazzling. I'm sure it did some permanent damage to people.
Yeah, Len, the guy was in here. He was very, very upset. I mean, he was not in a good place when I met him and we had dinner and stuff like that. He was going through this stuff constantly all day long with these migraines, and he had one like right before we started the show. And he also said that when he went to that I think it's an observatory, or there's a satellite, or there's a some sort of thing in West Virginia. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? It's a West Virginia radio. It's a dead zone. It's a quiet zone, right? Where there's zero frequencies, zero EMFs, zero radio frequencies or anything like that because of the. What is it? Is it some sort of like telescope that's there?
Radio telescopes.
Yeah. Can you find out what that thing is? What that zone is? The radio-free zone in West Virginia.
It's called the quiet zone.
Quiet zone. Yeah. So
it's only a couple hours from my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So allegedly, he said he can go there and all of his symptoms disappear.
Wow. I'd be curious, and Lynn, if you're watching this, I mean no offense at all, but I'd be curious to have somebody who's suffering those attacks. If we took them to a place that they 100% believed was a quiet zone, if the attacks would stop. If any element of that is somehow psychogenic, which doesn't discredit them at all, they're still experiencing the symptoms.
Right.
But did it start with a weapon, and is it continuing because of a psychogenic or some kind of issue like that? But I'd be curious to know. But
that's another thing about him too, which I think lends a lot of credibility, is he didn't have some sort of like military background, or like he didn't work on it. He didn't have like an excuse of why he would have been targeted. He's like, I don't know. I'm just a freaking civilian. He was an endocrinologist in the USSR. He came here and all of a sudden started experiencing these symptoms. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't trying to build some sort of credible backstory.
I have no explanation for any of that stuff.
Yeah. No.
I'm so for anybody that's going through that, I'm so uneducated. So take what I just said and I'm just throwing it out there.
Voice of God, V2K, is what Robert Duncan was saying that was.
Voice to skull.
Voice to skull, right.
Yeah.
Steve, look that up. That's going to be, you're going to find a rabbit hole there.
And that was originally, they started that in the 1950s with Dr. Jorge Delgado, I think, at Harvard University.
Yeah.
He put it inside of a bull's head, if I remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah, this is what Jack was talking about this on the podcast, where they were trying to.
He did it to a little girl too, which doesn't get a lot of media. And it was, she thought he was her dad, and they did some interesting stuff that's probably unethical.
How it works. The simplified diagram shows Chang's speech prosthetic in action. What is this? Is this the voice to skull?
This is voice to skull. There's not a lot of info on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine.
What you get is
bunch of crazy books.
So with this stuff, I don't think I'm in any danger. But do you ever start looking at some of this and feel like I might fall off of like a schizophrenia cliff looking at some of this stuff?
No, I'm not. No, I don't think I'm too disposed to that. But it's definitely like fun. You know what I mean? Because the thing about this kind of stuff is it seems it's a double-edged sword where it seems so fucking crazy that like you can't talk about this at dinner with anybody in your family, right? Anybody that doesn't listen to podcasts 24/7, you can't just have a casual conversation because they're going to look at you like you have two heads. But at the same time, like how much of that is real? You know, like how much of that is like, is it packaged in this wild woo-woo wrapping intentionally so people don't take it seriously?
Yeah. So I had a mentor who was an intelligence guy, psychiatrist. But when I was like 20 something years old, he was in his mid 70s. But he one time told me something that scared the hell out of me. And he said this hypothetically to me. But he said, if we ever captured somebody and we want to completely discredit them during the interview, interrogation, during the, whatever's happening, I'm going to have someone in a clown suit walk by and squirt water on them with a flower. I'm going to have a person dressed as a giraffe come in there and touch them on the head. I'm going to have the craziest stuff known to man mixing in with this sleep deprivation so that all of his testimony sounds schizophrenic.
Right.
And that's what I think of when I see some of this stuff, like all of these websites. And I'm like, how much is just added on to make it over dramatized to where it's just too much?
All the time, man.
I do too.
Are you familiar with Paul Benowitz, the case of Paul Benowitz? This is one of my favorite examples of this.
No.
So Paul Benowitz was and I'm very sorry to everyone who's listening that have heard me regurgitate this 1,000 times. But Steven's ears are bleeding. He just takes his headphones off when I tell the story. He was I believe it was in the 60s or 70s. He was like a big time UFO guy, right? He was like top guy in the UFO community, who lived in, I think it was New Mexico, over the mountain from a big Air Force base. And he was seeing these UFOs flying over this mountain almost every night, right before the sun went down. And he was writing about them, videotaping them, talking about them in these UFO conferences. And the Air Force caught wind of it, right? And they sent over the head of counterintelligence at that Air Force base. His name was Richard Doty, to pay a visit to see what he knew, see what kind of footage he had or whatever it was. Because they knew, this wasn't aliens. They knew that they were testing, crazy. This was right before the the stealth bomber came out. So he went over to visit Paul Benowitz, and he was like, "Show me what you got. Let's see what you have here."
Like at his house,
at his apartment, yeah. And so we started showing this counterintelligence guy from the Air Force base all the footage he had, asking him questions about it. And then Richard Doty, the Air Force guy, was like, "Oh man, this is kind of spooky. Like, I think this might be fucking aliens. I don't know what this is," because he knew that it wasn't aliens, but he also knew that the UFO community was infiltrated by Russian spies. And these Russian spies were in this UFO community specifically to get information on what the U.S. had or what was going on over here.
Yeah.
So he used Paul Benowitz as a conduit to sow disinformation into the UFO community and to sort of poison the well.
Yeah.
So that the spies that were in, any sort of spies that they thought could have been in that UFO community in the U.S. would be diverted.
Yeah.
And that's a great example. Another one of my other favorite examples was when they were first testing the first jet planes at Area 51, when the CIA pilots were testing the first jet propelled airplanes. They would send them up in the cockpit. They would send a gorilla mask in the cockpit with them. So in case they got in within visual distance of a civilian airplane, they'd put the gorilla mask on.
Yeah. That
fucking genius.
I remember reading that.
They've been doing that forever.
Yeah. Let's just overdo it. Mm-hmm. Let's just make the story 10 times crazier than it should be.
So if they were doing that in the 60s, imagine what they're doing today, especially with like Google and YouTube and this just monopoly of information.
Yeah. And one of the things, man, like if I could slightly change this track that we're on.
Yeah.
one of the fastest ways I've ever discovered is to get somebody off of one track of thinking and start getting them to start believing something else. Is you've heard of the Kubler-Ross grief model before,
No.
where it's like denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And those are like the 5 stages of grief that we all go through. It's debated maybe on Wikipedia or something, but I subscribe to it, and I've witnessed it a bunch of times. Conversationally, you can walk someone through those 5 stages of grief without them even knowing that they're going through that process, and get them to like relinquish control over like a previously held belief or a previously held, whatever you want them to get rid of. And it is so fast. I've used it in interrogations before, and I've used it in just situations where I want to get somebody's mind to change on anything. So if I think of something like you have a belief of X and I want to change it, like you're holding on to this belief. Let's say I'm a door-to-door sales guy and I'm selling you solar.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get you out of the mindset that like solar is for X number of people or this type of person. All I have to do is get you to denial. I say 1 or 2 things to get you angry. Then I start talking about like the different options that you have and get you into a bargaining mindset. And then talk about how all of your options are limited and like everything is so far out of our control and like push you into depression. And then I get you into acceptance 1,000 times easier, 1,000 times faster. So one of my clients owns a solar roofing company out on the West Coast, and he owns a company that goes kind of door to door. And I gave this to him. I didn't know if it would work in this situation, but they use this in door to door sales now, and they can just not wipe it, but get someone over their emotional ties to something that they held previously.
Wow.
It's a fascinating thing, just identifying that grief cycle. And then I'm not just looking at it as a psychologist or a psychiatrist and like, oh, this is what humans go through. I'm looking at it as like, oh, that's what humans go through. Why don't I just make you go through it and get you out of something that you used to be in?
Interesting. Are there certain types of neighborhoods he targets? Do you target neighborhoods of people that are suggestible, not necessarily rich neighborhoods, because these people are going to be like not going to take any bullshit?
I don't know. I think they do target high net worth people.
Really?
I think they do those neighborhoods for sure, because I know he's got a lot of those clients. Man, he's the most interesting dude ever. You should have him on the show. I don't know if he would talk about aliens and stuff, but he's a cool dude. But that grief model was so powerful in understanding, what shapes our behavior and what can change our behavior, because all the evidence, everything that you need to know is out there. There's all these studies of like, this is how humans process this is how humans respond to authority, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But even more important than that is, if we could kind of get on this influence train for a second, and this goes back to all this conspiracy stuff and how people get wrapped up in it, is everything that you look at, like if you search YouTube right now for influence training or persuasion or how to have confidence or charisma, fill in the blank, whatever you want, they're going to teach you how to change someone's thoughts and ideas. But if you can get down to the mammalian brain, now you're changing identity. So identity is what you truly want to change. You want someone to finish a conversation by in their head saying, I am the type of person who blank. Not I think blank, but I am. You want them to make an I am statement. Robert Cialdini's done studies on this and written books about it. He wrote Persuasion, which was a great book about it. But so much of what people think influences us is what influences a human brain, not what influences the mammalian part of our brain, the limbic system, this lower part of our brain. If someone can influence that in any of us, and myself included, I don't have some influence vaccine, like I'm as suggestible as the next person. If I can get to how I influence a mammal, which we were talking about this before we hit record, if I can influence the mammalian part of the brain, I can get somebody to do just about anything. And that's in that model that we talked about, or that we brought up on screen. Yeah.
So how is this practical in the things that you were doing in the military or in, did you work with like actual intelligence agencies?
In the military? Not while I was on active
After
duty.
the military?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
It was initially I made an offer to train Psyops for free. And then the only way that I developed a name for myself is as a trial consultant. And I had no experience, no credentials, nothing coming out of the military. So I offered a 200% money back guarantee on my fee, which I couldn't have paid. I could not have paid it. I was terrified the first case that I took. And I was up like 3 days in a row trying to prepare for just profiling one person. And that's kind of what put me on the radar for some of those people. And once I developed this chart, it looks like the periodic table of elements. It's called the behavioral table of elements. And we can bring it up there. It's fascinating. Let me just walk you through this thing really quick.
Yeah.
It's a map
This thing right here.
No.
Oh, no.
Just Google behavioral table of elements and you'll see it up there. But essentially, it's every behavior that a human being can do rated from least deceptive to most deceptive. And it's free online. I don't charge money for it or anything. That's it. So each one of those is a little human behavior and they're rated from least deceptive to most deceptive.
Okay.
And each one of those cells is some kind of thing like SHG right there is shrug. And if it's in blue letters, that means you're more likely to see that behavior during cold temperatures, which takes away from the meaning of it. So this is like the ultimate one-page guide to reading a human being. And this is all of our behavior. So all on here, you can see how likely it is to be deceptive, whether or not you're going to see it before, during, or after someone's statement, or the score of deception, the behaviors that are going to confirm your findings, the behaviors that are going to amplify it and give you more information. So everything on the right is the most deceptive or most stress, where there's no behavior for deception. And everything on the left is the least. They're the most comfortable. Everything in like that turquoise is facial expressions. And everything on the very bottom is what happens outside of our bodies, like how we interact with like objects on the table and the stuff that we actually say, like I'm rising vocal pitch, increasing speed, a non-answer statement. So those are all the different ways that we can be deceptive in our speech. So I tried to get all behavior for deception detection on one sheet. So each one of these is backed by a minimum of 4 pieces of research to make it onto this table.
Wow. So what are the most effective ways, or the quickest, most effective way to cut down to that primal mammalian brain?
So the biggest 2 things are going to be authority and novelty. So if we go back like, 20,000 years, when the average group of human beings was 120, 150 people in these tribal societies. Yeah. Let's say you went out and fished every day, came home every day and brought the fish back to your tribe. Let's say every day you pass by almost the same pathway and you walk by this one bush. And one day you're walking by this bush and the sun's about to set and a stick snaps behind that bush. That has all of your attention. You're not thinking about your kids. You're not worried about the food that you're holding. You're not worried about whether or not you have to go to the bathroom. Every piece of your focus. You're not even caring about your family right now for that 1 or 2 seconds that stick is snapping behind that bush. So when our brain is running a program of prediction, which is what we're doing now, we have conversations. I'm going to predict that in a few seconds you're going to say something, and then you know that I'm going to say something. And if I'm driving, I have a script for that. And everything, if you can just get good at scripts, it will change your life in understanding behavioral scripts. So what is a person's script really saying? So if I'm running a script that says I'm walking back to my tribe with fish right now, and that script is interrupted, that's when we generate mammalian brain focus. So we interrupt something that was expected. So I expected nothing to happen, and then something was back there. So our brain generates focus to respond to 2 different things, which is a potential threat or potential value. So if you're in the car, any kind of wild movement out of the corner of your eye, even if you're like texting and driving, anything that looks different than my brain's scripted responses, it says there's a potential threat. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So anything that's novelty that breaks away helps so much. And if you watch an episode of Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, the way that he trains dogs is step one, let's break the script. I'm going to break the behavioral script, and we're going to do something that you aren't able to predict and you can't really figure out what's going to happen next yet. So that's the number one way to generate that focus. And focus is the gateway to the mammalian brain. And authority is number two. So if we bring up that crazy circle diagram that I airdropped you, that center ring is everything that influences a mammal. So you think of training a dolphin, you think of training a dog, you think of like teaching a cow to do a trick or something for a show. It's all these four things, no matter what mammal it is. And this is focus. And then we have authority. So authority is next. And authority is comprised of 5 traits when it comes to human beings. And that's confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment. Those are the 5 things that just kind of tripwire other people's brains to say, I need to follow this person. And then we have tribe. This is our association to what are other people doing. I'm going to go along with the crowd, what the crowd is doing, and I need to think about the people around me. And then we have emotion. And these are the repetitive behaviors and scripts and things that we follow along through our life. So like tying your shoes is easy because your brain develops scripts for things to save you energy and time.
Right.
So if I can hack my way, if you look at it, so let's look at this from an infomercial standpoint. So the infomercial starts, they're like loud voice flashes on screen that, they're like the black and white video of someone like struggling to like open a lid or something. Like, so you're getting all this like focus that's coming up, novelty that you're not expecting. Then it gets into authority. How many that they've sold, how many people that they've helped, all the reasons that they're doing this big company. They say, this is blah, blah incorporated, or we've sold 10 million of these or whatever. Right. Then we get into tribe. I'm going to show you lots and lots of clips of all your friends, people that look similar to you using this thing with a happy face on. I'm going to show people using it when they've got friends over for the Super Bowl party. So now I'm triggering tribe upon tribe. So now you're using the sham wow to clean up at your big barbecue that you're going to have in your backyard. So I'm triggering all these tribal emotions. And then finally at the end, I'm triggering all the scripts. So behavioral scripts of mammals. Mammals respond to several behavioral scripts, but the biggest one is scarcity. So scarcity is not a human script. It's a mammalian script. And that the scarcity might be, the sale ends Sunday, or let's say a pack of dogs and the water is running out, or the food supply is going to run out. So that primes any mammal for action, any kind of scarcity. So you get to the end of the infomercial, and there's a countdown timer. We've only got 10 of these left for the next 20 people that call. We're going to only give these. We only have 12 minutes left on the clock right now.
Yeah.
So everything that truly persuades another person at a deep level, because you could change someone's mind about an idea or win a debate, but you do that on a human level, not a mammalian level. So once you get good at understanding what influences human beings, you can do anything. So even just looking at the Milgram experiment, they only needed 3 of those things on the human influence. So this outer ring right here, we have focus, compliance, suggestibility, connection, openness, and expectancy. We only had 3 of those for the Milgram experiment. Did they have focus? Hell yeah. There's tons of novelty. I'm in a room I've never been in, at a university I've never been to, with 2 people I've never met before, sitting in front of this shocking machine that I've never seen before, reading this quiz out loud into a mic I've never seen, at the quiz I've never seen. Everything's novelty there. Mm-hmm. So there tons of focus. Authority was there, a guy in the lab coat. Tribe was there. There's definitely emotion, behavioral scripts of responding to authority, continuing to go on. So they had all of those 4 things. And the emotion was, I need to be compliant, because what is the authority figure telling him? Yeah, keep going. It's not a big deal.
Right.
So that automatically triggers tribe and emotion, because if I'm the authority figure and I say, yeah, go ahead, Denny, it's not a big deal. You're going to assume everyone else does the same thing you do. So my authority, even though it's just me, you're going to assume everyone else responds to me with compliance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I have all of the mammalian brain is involved right there in the Milgram experiment. But in the Milgram experiment, human brain on the second outer circle here, focus, I have compliance, and I have suggestibility. There is zero connection to the guy in the lab coat or the guy on the other side of the wall. There's zero openness. That person is not opening up their heart or anything like that or becoming vulnerable in that situation. And there's zero expectancy. They have no idea to predict really what's coming next.
Right.
So the mammalian brain wins the show. If you get focus, and that novelty is what they missed when they did the dissection of the Milgram experiment. They said it was obedience to authority. It's a triggering of novelty and how that makes you vulnerable to authority. If there was no novelty, let's pretend that you were doing the Milgram experiment, but it's at your house.
It wouldn't work as much because you're used to that environment.
You have script familiarity. So I haven't broken you out of a script yet.
Oh, wow.
So that's the biggest thing that they forgot about in the Milgram experiment is novelty, novelty, novelty. If you break somebody out of scripts, behavioral scripts,
mm-hmm.
and just as a simple way to understand this, think about the difference between, let's say you're checking out at Starbucks and you're paying them money. What is her, let's say that barista, let's say it's a woman. What does her behavioral script say is going to happen? Let's say you go, oh yeah, how about the weather? It's beautiful weather this week. Is that triggering us, or is that in her script for you to say random shit like that? Yeah. Everybody who comes in.
She's used to that kind of shit, yeah.
But you say something off the wall, you say something bizarre, like, did you see that fight that happened outside, or something like that? That breaks a behavioral script and automatically generates focus because the brain does not know, I can predict what's coming up next. So the moment we get a human brain to think, I cannot predict what's going to happen next, we generate focus instantaneously. And during that slight window of focus, even if it's a tiny window of focus, your level of authority comes through, like, hey, and then you start doing something that, with that confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment, those 5 traits, you start exhibiting those 5 traits during that, and then you have authority. And then tribe and emotion are really easy. Those are just behavioral scripts that you can hack into.
Do you ever just find yourself in everyday life fucking around with people?
Every day. Yeah.
Just toying with them at the drive-thru?
Yeah, I did. I have a thank you email from Delta Airlines for this, but there was a guy on a flight that I was on who was jacked. Mm-hmm. Jacked. Like he was probably 285, less body fat than me, and just a gigantic, scary
juiced out of his gills.
Yeah, big time. And this guy's walking up the aisle, up and down the aisle. Veins are bulging out. He's holding his fist. I'm like, this guy's going to hurt somebody. So I told the flight attendant.
Did he look mad?
Yeah, he looked upset. Not mad. He looked really upset. And I told the flight attendant, I was like, hey, did you talk to this guy? Has anybody talked to him? He looks like he's violent. And she said, oh, I've already asked him if he's okay. He said he's really depressed and he's thinking about killing himself. I'm like, can you tell somebody on the plane? Like, I said, do you mind if can I go talk to him? Are y'all going to tackle me or anything if I try to go talk to him? And they're like, no. So I went over there and I used a stage hypnosis trick to put him into hypnosis on a plane. And we're up in the front of the plane, like where the galley is. And you know those little fold down chairs that the flight attendants would sit in?
That's the last place you want a guy like that sitting.
We did. We sat right there.
Oh my God.
Because there was all the seats were full. So I was like, all right, you go to sleep now, blah, blah, blah. Put him in a trance, sat him down in the seat, and just kind of reframed all of his beliefs. But I did it through this system. I was like, all of your focus is at the wrong place. Your authority is getting in the wrong place. So you're hanging, I don't know who you are or who your friends are, but you're hanging out with the wrong people, which is your tribe. And you're following the wrong behavioral scripts. Whatever scripts you're following right now, when you take a pair of scissors, imagine those as a bunch of strings and cut them off, cut them in half. Like the guy was a new person. Went back to a seat. And I'm paraphrasing 10 minutes of talking that I did with him. And he went back to his seat, and then he found me on Instagram, I don't know, a month or two later, and wrote me a really, really nice thank you letter. He's a really sweet guy.
Wow.
Super cool guy. But I don't know why I went off on that tangent.
Well, I was asking you just like, just going around everyday life and having this information. Like you must be just so observant of just random interactions with people.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised, like if you break someone's script, even if you do it in a fun way, make somebody's day better, but you start kind of experimenting with this stuff and you see how fragile and how easily hacked into our brains are. We could be made, if you look at the Milgram experiment, that means 67% of people can be talked into murder within 48 minutes, I think is what they did the experiment in.
Wow.
So we can get hacked into pretty easily. And I think the way that you get out of that, the way that you avoid that is learning how vulnerable you are. Because the more you think I'm immune to that stuff, that's like me buying a Windows computer and saying, I don't believe in viruses. I'm not going to download that McAfee thing. But if I believe that I'm vulnerable, then I get the antivirus. Then I'm aware of it and I'm looking out. You have to know that you're vulnerable.
How does somebody determine how vulnerable they are?
I don't know if a number system would help, or if that would really help that much. Maybe smooth lower eyelids is the key.
Huh.
I don't know.
How do you know? You know that you're suggestible, right? Like you said that multiple times already. How does somebody know? Like that would be a vulnerability, right? If you're suggestible.
Yeah. I would say if you find yourself clicking on ads on a regular basis, if you find yourself maybe buying stuff on Instagram or Facebook or whatever on a regular basis, which I do to this day. I got this watch because of an Instagram ad. So
I buy shit on Instagram too quite a bit.
Their algorithm is so good.
Yeah.
Because I'll buy stuff and I'll be like, man, that ad was made for me. They made that ad for me. But if you find yourself doing that stuff, or if you find yourself going down rabbit holes that don't make logical sense, once you back away from it, it doesn't make sense. That's the way that you like, if I'm doing those things, I need to put some stuff in place, put some hurdles for me so I don't make impulsive decisions. And if you are good at influence, that's what you're really good at. Well, there's two things. You're good at weaponizing cognitive dissonance, number one. So if you're good at influence, you're using cognitive dissonance as a weapon. Number two, you're good at identity and crafting and shaping who a person, not who they think they are, who they publicly say they are. Those are two different things. So if I can get you to publicly agree that you are one type of person, even if it's a very small commitment, then I'm starting to shape identity and who you publicly agreed that you are, who you are as a person. And I think at the end of the day, that's what truly matters. I'm just shaping those two things. Identity, I'm using identity as the hallway and cognitive dissonance as the wall.
It's fascinating. So when you said you were a trial consultant in the beginning. What sort of cases were you taking, and how were you? Were they like murder cases or?
I've worked a couple of big high profile ones. And
did you do the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp?
No.
Oh, damn it! I think the whole world did that one.
Yeah, yeah. But most of the ones that I did were. Just to be honest, it was wealthy people that were being sued because they owned a business and then people were suing them. So that's usually what it is. And most of them were jury trials.
Interesting.
And some of them were wealthy person with tax evasion or wealthy person with most of those like complaints. It was people you've never heard of that maybe own a small country club or own a little medical practice or something like that, or a plastic surgery clinic. And they get a lawsuit and they go to a jury trial for a lot of these, and we'll go in and pick the jury or help them pick the jury.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you help them pick the jury?
We talk to them about what questions to ask, number one, and then what behavioral profile you're going to look for.
Interesting.
So what kind of person. So like,
oh, wow.
If let's say I did a case pro bono one time. Yeah, I can talk about it. A lady was suing a grocery store chain because she slipped on a green bean or piece of watermelon or something on the floor. And so we needed a jury. You know what locus of control is? Like an external locus or an internal locus. So
okay, yeah.
It's either like, I believe the world happens to me, like maybe a victim, or I believe I happen to the world. Right. I choose my fate. So we wanted a jury with an external locus of control who would be more likely to side on a victim's side. Does that make sense so far? So we would ask these jury members the only question. It's just one question because the attorneys are allowed to ask several questions. I don't know the law very well, but I think it differs by state. But the question we passed around to each jury member to determine locus of control was, how does a person catch a cold? That's it. So I'll let you be the trial consultant here. So you hear one juror say, well, I didn't take my vitamins enough. I didn't take care of myself. I wasn't really washing my hands. I didn't sanitize when I should have sanitized. I have vitamin C at home, but I always forget to take it, and that's my fault. And I mean, there's probably a million reasons. You hear another juror say, well, there's a million reasons you can catch a cold. These little kids picking their nose, wiping boogers on the stair rails. There's people coughing and not covering up their mouth. There's people that are going outside their house and they're sick. That you became a trial consultant just then. Like, you know exactly the type of person that you're dealing with in both of those cases.
Right.
Because one's external and one's an internal locus. So we come up with a bunch of questions like that determine what is the psychological profile that I'm looking for in a jury.
Let me ask you this. What is the psychological profile of the jury you want to pick for this guy that just whacked the CEO of the United Health?
I definitely want to pick people who have an external locus of control and feel like the world happens to them.
Wouldn't one of the questions be, what is your feeling towards insurance companies? Like how do you feel? What is your disposition towards insurance companies? If that is one of the questions, how the fuck do you find somebody who doesn't have a negative feeling towards insurance companies?
Right. And
I feel like you have to either be a CEO of an insurance company or not. It's black and white. If you're a CEO, you like insurance companies. If you're not a CEO, you probably don't like them. So I feel like it's going to be a difficult jury.
Yes, but the thing is, when you ask a jury pointed questions like that they can do what's called a manipulative answer, or I forget the word that we use, countermeasure. So we call it a countermeasure answer. So let's say I ask you, do you like insurance companies or whatever, and you can know that that's about the case, and you really want to be on this case.
Got it.
So you can make stuff up. So the question for this trial, it usually takes me a while to get them ready to go.
Right.
But the question for this trial would be, do you think large companies have our best interest at heart? And I wouldn't say yours. I would say our best interest at heart. So now they're answering for a collective instead of themselves.
Right.
It's harder to dodge. And it's not straight on the nose where a person knows what the right answer is and what the wrong answer is. You want to ask them the question that's ambiguous, that gets them to reveal the most data without knowing it.
Yeah, it still seems like it's going to be hard, because even with that question, I feel like you're going to get a pretty much flatline answer for most of the people that are on that jury. But there's a bunch of ways you could do it. Like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you agree with the phrase, we reap what we sow? And then have the jury answer that way as well. Yeah, they'd have to be pretty vague. What was that model you were just telling me about?
FATE, F-A-T-E.
The FATE model.
Yeah,
okay.
Focus, authority, tribe, and emotion.
Okay.
And that will dictate whether or not you're successful. And I mean, we have AI coming up. We've got economic stuff that's going on. But if you go back to BC years, this is what determined your ability to leverage this stuff, was what determined whether or not your business succeeded, whether or not you got elected in political offices. I don't think this AI will never replace having human skills. And there's a lot of people that want that. I think there's an obsession with scripts nowadays, like where they're like, what do you say exactly? Because there's even books, you go on Amazon, it's like exactly what to say. There's books that are titled this, like what to say when blah, blah, blah.
Just for like normal everyday social encounters?
Yeah. What to say. So I had so many clients that come to me because I'm anti-script, and then they get into my inner circle. I have this like a kind of an elite coaching group that we meet every week on Sunday. And they all secretly are like, hey man, so what's the script? So they still get it. They still have that like obsession with scripts, which I did for a decade or two, working with influence and trying to figure out how people are convinced to do things. And everybody focuses on, what do you say? What do you say? So here's the question that I would pose for any of those people that are wondering if I need some script for something. If I have let's say this is a flight checklist for a Boeing 737. Me pushing this over to you and you taking possession of it does not make you a pilot.
Right.
Let's say I have a perfect sales script that, let's say I spent $10 million developing the most amazing sales script that's ever been invented for any company you can think of. And then I take that perfect sales script and I give it to somebody with social anxiety. They're not going to sell. It has almost nothing to do with the words that you're saying. And that's a mistake. I train sales teams all around the world.
Yeah, it's bottom up. You can't do it top down. You can't just you can't just look at the manual and read the. It has to come from experience, right?
Yeah. So what they'll do is, and this isn't just sales teams. This is psychology research does this, and if you look at behavioral research does this. Sales teams will do the exact same thing. Who's the top salesperson? What do they say? Let's write down what they said and give it to Timmy over here. And then Timmy's like, hey, I'm going to read the same script that John has because John's the top sales guy. None of them realizing that person has the ability to generate focus better. They have more authority, which is that confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment. Those 5 things. That's what makes the sale happen. That authority is what makes people change their mind on stuff. There are great words to say, and it's amazing to have those good words, but they don't do much without the authority. The flight checklist is helpful. A passenger might be able to land that plane, but it's a lot better and more effective when you have the skills that are behind it, that authority.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And what kind of group do you like these people that are in this group? Because there's another thing too, there's that, right? There's the idea of, or there's the practice of wanting to manipulate behaviors and get people to change their behaviors. But like, there's something behind that. Like, what kind of person is hyper obsessed with wanting to change people and manipulate people, unless they're some sort of government operative or a salesperson?
I think it's people that own businesses that want to be better leaders. And just learning all of these techniques makes you a better leader in general, especially if you have empathy and you're like a decent human being.
Is that a foundational trait of human beings?
What's that?
To be leaders? To want to be leaders? Is that like a primal instinct? Like on this like if you go deep into the brain, is that like one of the foundational drives of human beings, do you think?
It's one of them.
To be followed and be revered?
For some people. I think we have there's a few different needs that we strive for in life. We have significance, which is people that strive to be significant. We have the approval people that my whole life I'm striving for some kind of recognition or approval. We have acceptance people. These are people that thrive on tribe. I need to be belonging and part of something. Then we have the intelligence people. I need to be seen as smart. We have the power people. I need to be seen as strong or powerful. You'll see a lot of this posturing kind of behavior like that. So you'll see power people and significance people both rise up into leadership positions for very different reasons. One for legacy and one for self-gratification. And finally, we have a pity. So those are the 6 basic, and they're basic, but 6 basic things that we need to feel from other people. I can't feel significant unless other people confirm it. I can't feel intelligent unless other people confirm it. So those are the 6 needs we need from other people. And when it comes to that, like when you see significance-driven people, that's mostly what's in my mastermind. I've got politicians in there. I've got psychotherapists and psychiatrists in there. There's people that are psychiatrists coming to learn these skills to talk people out of suicide or self-harm or get somebody to kind of walk their way out of an eating disorder. There's a lot of different people in there. Then again, there's some people in there that are just, I've got a guy in there that is I don't remember what he's some kind of stage performer. He does some kind of magic or something like that on stage and wants to know how to like manipulate the crowd better to make the show better.
Right.
So I think when people say manipulation, it's like saying a scalpel is bad. It's only bad if I stab you with it. Like I can also save your life with a scalpel.
Right.
So what we do with it, the same techniques that a cult recruiter uses to talk somebody into joining a cult are, and I've studied these, are the same techniques that a hostage negotiator uses to talk somebody off of a ledge, or a suicide crisis hotline operator uses.
Interesting.
So I need to capture this focus, get the authority in there, and just walk this person back into reality.
Yes. That's why I've had a lot of former Scientologists on this podcast, being that we live in literally the world capital of Scientology. The like flag building of Scientology is less than 5 miles away from here in Clearwater. And one of the main hooks to get people into Scientology, which I think is a super beneficial learning lesson and has value for people, is that Dianetics book, which teaches people, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's this book that Ron Hubbard wrote. You read it?
Yeah.
It's great. It seems like a great way to get rid of all the negative influences in your life and become a better version of yourself, right?
Yeah.
But then once you get beyond that, that's usually when the sinister, manipulative things come into play. That's how you hook them into the cult, by dangling that carrot or that shiny fruit up front. And then you figure out how to capitalize on somebody after that, once you get them in the door, so to speak.
Yeah, I think a lot of cults work that way, where like, here's some beneficial stuff that can change your life, and you get into that and you're like, wow, I'm starting to see some benefits.
And that's why there's so many successful people in Scientology, is because of that. I mean, that's a super way, that's a great way to like optimize your life, or if you have a business to like.
Scientology published a series of books back in maybe the 70s called Success Through Communication. And they're little blue books. You can find them on eBay, but they're fabulous. They have great techniques in there, but then, like, I guess I don't know much about Scientology, just to put that out there. But I guess there's some point where you get all this confidence, like you get more confident in your life. You're starting to like, I'm more in charge of the world around me. You kind of get that feeling.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, we're going to walk through this door, and now it's time to talk about aliens.
Right.
Like
Xenu, the galactic overlord.
Yeah.
Right.
So I never got that. And I think there's so many techniques in Scientology that were copied by the CIA on paper. Ron Hubbard invented this thing called the Alice in Wonderland technique. We need to bring this up on the screen.
Find it, Steve-O. I haven't heard of this one. Did you know about the story about how David Miscavige, he's the new leader of Scientology, he's literally had thousands of his members file civil lawsuits against the IRS, and that's how they achieved their status as a actual religion to get tax exemption. Yeah. The IRS just couldn't handle all the lawsuits. They overwhelmed them. Yeah. All right, what do we got here? Okay, which one of these are we looking at?
Yeah, TR4.
The coach, okay, TR4, Dear Alice. The student reads several lines from Alice in Wonderland to the coach as if they are saying them themselves. The coach then acknowledges or flunks the student based on how clearly they communicated the line. Yeah. Other training routines in Scientology include independent book study, cooperative activities. Okay. Hubbard's writings emphasize that auditing subjects are machines to be manipulated rather than autonomous people.
So the line, go right down to that Reddit thing.
Why Alice in Wonder? Why else? Okay.
So you don't have to read the article, but essentially what Ron Hubbard does is have people read out of this book of Alice in Wonderland. The verbiage is very confusing. And Ron Hubbard openly wrote about this in his work, and I'll give you all of my research on it. And then the CIA, without even attributing anything to him, copied it almost word for word in an interrogation manual. And I have that PDF too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And then the grandfather of hypnotherapy, Milton Erickson, started writing about it. So being able to speak confusing phrases helps you to be more persuasive. They discovered this in the 50s and 60s that if I can confuse your brain acts as though it's somebody that's falling. So if you imagine when you're falling, your limbs are flailing all over the place, and the first solid object that they come into contact with, it's going to like grab around it no matter what, even if it's a thorn bush or something.
Okay.
Right? So anything that's solid in that moment of confusion is going to get grabbed onto. So the brain corollary to this is if a person's confused, the first logical piece of information they hear after being confused will be automatically accepted, or more automatically accepted, without being screened or scrutinized by the brain. This makes sense?
Yeah.
So
how, like practically, how would this be used?
If you spoke a confusing phrase very confidently and then told somebody to just completely open up right afterward, you're gonna lower a whole lot of defenses for any technique you want to use afterward. So that's a basic way to say that. So an example would be, and you know that this is a confusing statement, but if we're in a conversation and I'm speaking in a really confident way, and I said something like, how different would it be if the same thing started looking now like it wouldn't change if nothing else really did? And you could just get completely open. So getting good at those statements, and the one that I just said out loud is very effective. And you can try this out. I've had people that are in my coaching group use this on stage in large groups of people. And I think some of them have used it to do an upsell before. But you can tie a logical thought at the end of a confusion statement, and getting people good at being confusing is good to make them more powerful communicators. But the auditor, I think, is what they call the person that reads things to the subject across the table, is using those confusing statements and inserting those things afterward. And it's in the textbook it's more of a pamphlet of success through communication. And I wish I could bring that up, man.
Yeah, the auditing thing is bizarre. Is a bizarre aspect of Scientology because they have these e-meter machines, these electrical. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but there's
like GSR.
A GSR?
Yeah.
Where they hold these two rods and then they ask them personal questions and they get these people just to open up about their deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah. It's a galvanic skin response is what it's measuring. It's the same thing you would have. It's part of a polygraph.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it's wild because it's super effective in basically blackmailing people.
Yeah. And I've loved the e-meter concept for a while. I don't think it's extremely reliable for like reading human emotion.
Right. Well, neither is the polygraph, right?
No. But I mean, there are new neural networks that are 98.4% effective at detecting human risk. And they can call you on your cell phone and ask you a yes or no question, and it's 98.4% effective. Proven by Carnegie Mellon, proven by the Department of Defense. I as a disclaimer, I am on the board of that company, but it is scary accurate. And
what kind of questions do they ask?
You can ask anything. We can use it to find bad guys overseas. We can use it to screen people for job interviews, insurance fraud. We're going to be using it in boxing soon, just to ask people, are you doping? Are you blood doping or whatever? Can you pass the test? And the system is called Asterisk. But it can just ask you it's an AI that calls your phone and says, here's the questions you're going to be asked. It tells you the questions beforehand. And they're all yes or no. And it asks you 4 or 5 yes or no questions. And it's 98.4 plus is what they say in the research, 98.4% plus accurate in detecting risk. But it's more like a metal detector at an airport. And because calling something a lie detector is just not, I don't think it's accurate. I don't think anything should be called a lie detector. So it's just like when you go to the airport, if the machine goes off, it's almost 100% sure that there's something big and metal on your body. Whether or not it's a belt buckle or an AK-47 is going to be up to a human.
Right.
So this AI that we're using is directing human attention. So it's the fastest pathway to identify risk, but it's also the fastest pathway for me to find out if I have a group of 100 people here, where can I trust? Where can I invest trust the fastest way? So that's what it really is. It's the fastest pathway to get to trust. And I don't know how the hell we got it. Oh, the e-meter.
Yeah.
So I've been obsessed with the e-meter. Dude, I went on eBay so many times and tried to find them on eBay. You can't find them.
Really?
I think maybe Scientology buys them up.
They probably do.
But I do think L. Ron Hubbard was a genius. Hands down.
He was something, man. I think he was the most prolific science fiction writer of all time. I think, like, objectively, he's written more science fiction than anyone we're aware of.
Yeah. So there's a lot of research out there that suggests he had a condition in his temporal lobe called hypergraphia.
Whoa, bless you.
Damn.
That was aggressive.
So there's some research that says he most likely suffered from a condition called temporal lobe epilepsy, which produces a byproduct called hypergraphia, where it's this incessant, almost unsatisfiable need to write and continue writing. And Steve, you can probably bring that up. Just type in L. Ron Hubbard temporal lobe epilepsy. And it is a very compelling case. So people with temporal lobe epilepsy, I am one of them. I have temporal lobe epilepsy.
What is the function of the temporal lobe?
Time and memory.
Okay.
So there's
temporal lobe epilepsy, right? A common type of epilepsy that affects the memory regulating temporal lobe of the brain. Wow.
So that's where your hippocampus is down there. You got a lot of crap going on down there. But
oh, wow.
I was at a point in my life where I was having 9 seizures a day, which I know you wanted to even open this episode with that talk, and we didn't. I forgot.
We were talking about this before we started, yeah.
Yeah. But I was having temporal lobe seizures at 9 times a day, and it is very, very adjacent to what you might experience on DMT, except scary, terrifying, and horror movie-esque. And they last about a minute, and you're just like, your body just is like a rag doll. You're not shaking on the ground and doing crazy stuff, but it's like you have this weird access to another dimension for a time being. And I know there's people out there that are suffering with temporal lobe epilepsy right now, and I was able to stop mine, like 100% stop, 0 seizures.
Did it come out of nowhere?
No, they think it's probably a result of a genetic predisposition mixed with a bunch of deployments, being around explosions and stuff like that. So getting a little tiny bit of a brain injury. So during temporal lobe epilepsy, those seizures, you're experiencing what I would call maybe between 90 days and a year of memories in 60 seconds. So you're getting access to so much information and so much weird stuff, almost like you're living a year of someone else's life. And then the moment the seizure's over, for one seizure, it took me like 2 weeks to reconcile what was real and what was fake. And then you have derealization in temporal lobe epilepsy, which is where you wonder, like, am I real? Is this room real? Am I actually sitting here right now? I had a point before our daughter was born. I thought my dog was fake. I thought my dog was artificial and not real. Not like I'm imagining it. I just thought, like, that is not a real dog. It is so weird, man. It messes with your head.
Like a projection or something?
And I didn't put any logic to it.
No, it's just felt that it was not real.
Yeah. But and I'm going to tie this back to L. Ron, I promise. But as the seizure is starting, they call this an aura. You have this weird thing that goes on.
Yeah.
Like something's going on around me where you know that's going to happen. As it starts, the deja vu is so powerful and so strong that in your brain, there is no possibility that everyone around me didn't set this up. So it's a weird feeling of, like, everything around me is so weirdly familiar that I know that everyone here had to set this up. So it's almost like a weird paranoia. And then you think, like, all of this can't be real. And then the moment that happens, it's like you're going, like you jump off a building. It's like a falling feeling in your stomach. And then it's just lights out. So it's terrifying, but it's almost like there's some weird access to something that other people don't have access to. And they call this the sacred disease, temporal lobe epilepsy. And hypergraphia, I mean, look, I wrote that while I was suffering all that. So I definitely had hypergraphia. It took me 5 years to write, but I wrote this book because I thought I was going to lose my whole brain, and I had to dump everything, even the super, super confidential stuff. I put everything in the book, everything. And I wanted all of my training to be in one location. And just so my wife could keep selling the book.
That was the motivation to write?
The motivation to write the book was my brain was dying. And I thought, I'm not going to be a good provider. I can't provide for my family anymore. So I thought if I could just write this book that has everything in it, then we'll be okay. The kids can survive. We can still put food on the table and all that, even if I'm in a wheelchair or something.
Right.
So that's the only reason that book exists.
Wow.
But coming back to L. Ron, I know how that feels. If he had temporal lobe epilepsy, I know how that feels. And that may explain a lot of those little internal components of what make up Scientology.
Interesting.
I believe.
You said you had 9 seizures a day?
Yeah.
And you said like these memories were coming back, like a flood of memories, which felt like deja vu. Were they your own memories all coming into one moment?
At the beginning? Like the aura moment at the start?
When you say aura, what do you mean specifically aura?
It's just a feeling when the seizure is about to start.
Not like a visual thing?
No.
Okay.
But it wasn't memories. The deja vu was, you know how it's uncanny?
Yeah.
Like everything around is so alien but familiar. Mm-hmm. Like I've been here before, but times 5,000. Like it's off the charts. Mm-hmm. And then after that, that's when the memories come in. It's not your own memories. It's something else. And it's like months to maybe years of memories that happen in like 60 seconds. And I've had times right before I got married. I'm going to get emotional talking about it. But right before I got married, I had maybe one of the worst. And it was maybe 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes long. And you lose about 1 million neurons a second in a seizure. It's bad. So I was thinking like I'm fucked, you know? So I was in my office and I was hunched over the desk, and I had been in a seizure so long there was just a pool of saliva beside my desk, and I was trying to scream. It's like inside the seizure, it's like all those memories flooding and having sleep paralysis at the same time. And it's terrifying. Jeez. It's not like DMT at all, but it's what I'm saying. The corollary is like you go somewhere else completely. You're gone. It's terrifying.
Jesus Christ. How did you overcome this? How did you get over it?
So I saw a neurologist, and they gave me a prescription that I won't say the name of the drug, but it's one of the most common side effects of the drug was seizures. It's like, this cannot be real. This can't be real. And I'd studied neuroscience for 5 years at this time, 6 years. So I am scrolling through Instagram one day, taxiing on a runway in LA. And I see this dude on Instagram. He sounds like some California surfer dude. And he's talking about mitochondria. And just because of his accent, I judged him like an idiot. But I just kind of flipped past it. Then I realized what he was talking about. And I tried to go back to the post, but I hit the swipe right on accident. You know, when like you reset your scroll and you can't go back. I did that. And it took me like 4 days to find him. And his name's Dr. John Lawrence. And I'm going to introduce you to him tomorrow, which is going to be cool.
Oh, that's the guy in Sarasota.
Yeah. So he's talking about methylene blue, which I know Jack Cruz has talked about here. And
I got some methylene blue. I started taking it after I had this lady Alexis.
What brand is
PhD.
that?
It's called Troscriptions. They have like a website. It's pretty cheap.
Is it hard?
Inexpensive. No, they come in these little, they're called troches. So if you see, like, it comes in these, and they're like...
Yeah, that's pretty much what I take.
You just stick them right in the back of your... you can either keep them, like, in between your gum and your lip, and it stains your whole mouth blue, or you can just swallow it.
Yeah.
Want one?
No. I took them this morning.
Did you?
I take them every day.
I'm going to throw one in right now.
So for methylene blue, I think it's the one thing that truly reversed everything that was going on with my brain. Every single symptom that I was having was just gone. And I credit everything to methylene blue and finding Dr. John. And I buy my methylene blue from Dr. John's website just because I'm so passionate about it.
Wow.
And methylene blue acts as, just to give you like a 60-second brochure of what it does. It's a light MAOI, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So it helps our cells to get rid of the two things that we don't really want in our cells a lot of, is reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species. And it donates an electron. It donates a lot of electrons to mitochondria. And the second thing that it does, well, it does a lot more than that. And it helps. Your body's main job is to take an oxygen molecule and stick some hydrogen on there and turn it into water. Mm-hmm. That's your body's job. But sometimes it doesn't do that, and an oxygen molecule gets screwed up and turns into a reactive oxygen species. So the second thing that it does is it has an affinity to neuronal tissue. So if you take that methylene blue right now, and then 2 hours from right now, we did an autopsy on you, and let's say you died, your brain is blue, bright blue.
Really? It gets into the brain?
Steven, look up methylene blue brain autopsy. Yeah, so it's your spinal cord, all your nerves, brainstem, whole brain is all blue.
So if I take one of those and I take a leak later, my pee is blue.
Yeah. So there.
Oh, wow. Look at that. The brain and the heart.
Oh, yeah.
Is blue.
Yeah, man.
So how are they getting this stuff into a dead person?
They don't. That was probably a living person who was on methylene blue. And some of these they use to stain. Methylene blue is obviously it's just a blue dye.
Right. Yeah, they use it for fish tank cleaner.
Yeah. So these may be used to stain, but if you do an autopsy on a person who's on a dose of methylene blue higher than probably
scroll up
2 milligrams per kilogram.
No, up farther. It shows the abstract. Yeah, go down. Sorry, go ahead. This says greenish blue discoloration of the brain and heart were observed during the autopsy of a 63-year-old woman who had been treated with methylene blue for septic shock following a traffic accident. This placebo or avatar discoloration occurs when the colorless metabolite leucomethylene blue is oxidized to methylene blue upon exposure to atmospheric oxygen. Huh. So she was suffering from septic shock, and they gave her the methylene blue.
Yeah. So it has an affinity for neuronal tissue. So this guy who discovered it's 1894-ish, and the Industrial Revolution was kicking off, and they're like, hey, we need to dye a bunch of stuff blue. We got a huge need for that. So this scientist invents or discovers this methylene blue, and he's dicking around with it, and he shoots it into a rat and then does an autopsy on the rat, and the rat has a blue nervous system. Wow. The whole thing. So he's like, there's something special about this. It's not just for dyeing stuff, because he was using it on slides to dye, microscope slides.
Yeah.
So it has an affinity to go into just the neuronal tissue and fix that first. It'll fix the rest of your body too, because it goes everywhere, especially when you take intravenous methylene blue, which I'm going to be doing tomorrow. But it is so incredible. And with the MAOI and it turning your body blue, it's blue because it reflects blue light, right? Which means that it absorbs red. So if I do red light therapy with methylene blue, I'm exponentially increasing.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You can fact check me like Uncle Jack.
Type in methylene blue and red light therapy.
So this combination is called photobiomodulation.
Okay.
So I'm using a red light machine, and the methylene blue soaks up that red light.
What is this? This is PubMed. Find the abstract. Scroll down. It'll give you like a summary of what it is.
There it is. Protection against neurodegeneration.
Neurons are metabolically protected against degeneration using low-level methylene blue and infrared light and near-infrared light interventions. Both of these novel interventions act by a cellular mechanism involving enhancement of the electron transport chain in mitochondria. This promotes energy metabolism and neuronal survival. Methylene blue preferentially enters neuronal mitochondria after systematic administrations, and at low doses forms an electron cycling redox complex that donates electrons to the mitochondrial electron transport chain. Interesting. Oh, low-level near-infrared light applied transcranially delivers photons to cortical neurons that are accepted at cytochrome oxidase.
Cytochrome C. Specifically, it would be cytochrome C oxidase.
Oh, wow. Which increases cell respiration and cerebral blood flow. Breakthrough in vivo studies with these interventions suggest that targeting mitochondrial respiration may be beneficial for protection against different types of neurodegenerative disorders. Oh my God. I had no idea that you could use them together, and it that makes sense how it would reflect the blue light and help you absorb more red light.
Yeah. So, and that cytochrome, just thinking of the word cytochrome. Cyto means cell, chrome means color. So always think of like that's the color of light. Jack talked about this a lot, how we generate a little bit of near infrared light in our cells. Mm-hmm. So cytochrome is the important chemical there. And he talked about magnetism we have sulfur and iron and stuff that's in the mouth of cytochrome C oxidase. So doing that lets it absorb that. So your cells are kind of running on those photons instead of just the electrons.
Wow, man. Yeah, he was also explaining to me how one of his family members was like going blind and needed cataract surgery. And he told them to start doing this red light therapy every day for like months. And he was doing it, I think, for a couple months. And he wasn't wearing the eye cover or whatever. He was just like full eyes fully exposed to this near infrared light panels. And
I never do.
He went in like a couple months before he had to get his operation done for his cataracts, and his vision was like he didn't need the cataract surgery anymore. It like something about that near infrared red light with exposure to the eyes, it somehow like reproduces visual neurons or like rebuilds these visual neurons.
Yeah, I think what it probably does is makes more ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is our cell's energy. So those cells, cataracts is a degenerative disease. Mm-hmm. So we're getting less ATP. So more ATP probably means that there is more neural connectivity. Those cells had more energy to perform repairs on themselves.
Right.
And the cool thing about mitochondria, which I was hoping that Jack would mention, is mitochondria is not human. It has different DNA than us. It's alien. And the theory,
what do you mean by that?
All right, Stephen, look it up. You got a skeptical face on again.
I'm just trying to understand it. How does it have different DNA than us?
So
I'm just not. Yeah, I don't know enough about this stuff.
There's a theory now that mitochondria is the result
Type
of
in DNA after that. Oh wait, there you go. Mitochondria are considered unique because they have their own DNA called mitochondrial DNA. A double membrane structure unlike most other organelles, and the ability to replicate independently within a cell. Huh. Okay.
So there's a theory that the mitochondria was its own little organism and formed a relationship with little single-cell organisms and like, hey, bro, I'm going to give you a bunch of energy. I'm going to help you absorb sunlight and live outside the water. So let's form this little relationship together. So that's just a theory that somebody has that, and how these things started working together, because it's not human.
That's fascinating. That is pretty badass. Yeah, the water inside of the mitochondria is like the most important thing. And what Jack was explaining to me is that if you combine, but if you expose yourself to really cold temperatures, I think he calls it thermogenesis, cold water thermogenesis. Your cells create, and your mitochondria actually create endogenous UV light inside the body. like UV, like blue light,
Yeah.
which is wild.
You get better results if you're drinking water that has lower deuterium levels.
Yeah, that's why he drinks all that deuterium depleted water.
Oh, did he talk about that? I might have missed that part.
Yeah, he talked a little bit. Alexis talked about the deuterium depleted water. Yeah,
I drink it almost exclusively at home.
it's expensive, isn't it?
It is very expensive.
So-
I order from this company called Light Water. I have no affiliation with the company, but I order
LIGHT.
No, LITE.
Oh, okay.
Light Water Scientific, I think, is the name of the company. And you can order it on Amazon, I think, even.
Interesting.
It's these little blue bottles, plastic bottles. And even the company recommends, like, deuterium depletion is very important. So you don't have to just drink this water straight. You can pour it into your daily water intake so you're getting less deuterium than normal. So you're diluting the water with it. So you can still drink normal water out of a Brita filter or something and then pour that stuff in there.
Yeah, and I think the idea is that, at least from the way Alexis explained this to me, was that closer latitudes that are closer to the equator have higher levels of deuterium in the water, and the higher up you get on the planet, the higher latitudes have less deuterium in them. And this has something to do with organisms that live and survive at upper latitudes where there's less sunlight. They get somehow, because there's less UV light, the colder temperatures compensate for the less UV light. That's why their eyes are lighter. Their eyes aren't dark like most people that live at equatorial latitudes.
Yeah.
They have dark brown eyes because they don't need as much UV light because they're exposed to it all the time.
Have you heard the theory that you can't get a sunburn if you're not wearing sunglasses?
Alexis explained that to me. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. She was explaining to me how there's an important mechanism where you have to be, if you're exposed to UV light, you can't, it's not good to block the UV light in the eyes and only get it on the skin. That's how your skin develops those basal cell anomalies where you get skin cancer and stuff like that.
Melanopsin.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it's not good if you're outside all day to be wearing sunglasses because you're blocking your light, your eyes from creating that melanopsin from the UV light. You need to have that balance. And that's why Jack tells everybody to take off their sunglasses, because he thinks that that's probably like one of the biggest problems with people getting skin cancer and general health problems. I mean, his whole idea about health is that exposure to UV light and getting out of artificial light is like the top thing for human health.
Yeah.
He was explaining how, like, food and hyper processed foods and diet is like 3 or 4 down the ladder, down the rung, as far as like low hanging fruit to improve our health. And he was explaining that, like, essentially, which I think you made a good point about in the podcast I listened to you with, was that, we exist today, like human beings, with the development of technology and us being inside all the time under these artificial lights, is almost the equivalent of orcas at SeaWorld being inside these big tanks all the time. It's just not good. Their life expectancy just goes down. They're like, they're killing their trainers. I mean, it's literally breaking them down in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah. And I think the closer we get to nature, like what were our bodies designed to do? We can't, technology is outpacing our ability to adapt. Technology is outpacing our ability to adapt to it.
Yes.
Genetically.
Yeah.
And we need to go back to like what kept our ancestors alive. And that seems to be, all these studies are like discovering the stuff that like our ancestors didn't even need research for, because they just lived life in nature. But I published a paper, a month or two ago, called Ancestor Confusion Theory, that if you are spending time in a place that would confuse the shit out of your ancestor that lived 10,000 years ago, the more time you spend in one of those places that would confuse your ancestor, the more you have depression, anxiety, loneliness, heart disease. And like, you look at cities, and these are like, I just did a podcast with Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO, and I was staying in Brooklyn, and looking out my hotel window, I can't find a piece of nature, no matter where I looked. Every direction, there's nothing.
Right.
So, and I'm not claiming to have some solution to solve the Earth's problems, but I'm just making that correlation of when people are in environments that our bodies are not designed to be in, we have things that go wrong. And this applies to fish and dolphins. And you take an octopus out of the ocean, put it in a tank, no matter how perfect the saliency of the water is and everything that you do in that tank to replicate nature perfectly, it shortens the lifespan of the octopus by years.
Yeah.
So I think one of our modern world, our biggest problem, I think the biggest problems in science are when we think we are special, humans are more special than nature, and we can outsmart nature. The thing that created us, or whatever created us, is like we are special is one of the biggest things. This goes back to the Earth being the center of the universe, and now like aliens have to look like us, and like all of this little things that we hear is like, especially with science, is the root of the problems come back to humans have to be special for this thing to be true.
One of the other things about this, like being exposed to more UV light, is the timing of it too. Like how this all connects to circadian biology, and how the light, how the eyes are play such an important role in this. And when you are up in the morning watching the sunrise, depending on where you are on the earth, whenever the sun rises for like that first hour and you're outside and your eyes are exposed to that sunlight, whether it be direct, it doesn't have to be direct, it can be ambient sunlight, as long as you're outside with no windows between you and the outdoors, that's when your brain creates melatonin, which makes you fall asleep when the sun goes down. So if you're waking up, you could even be waking up when the sun rises. If you're not going outside, you're going to have trouble going to sleep at night. Yeah.
And that's why there's so many people on shift work that suffer all kinds of problems. Like you have more obesity on shift work, people that work nights and stuff like that. You have, I think, triple the rate of obesity. I can't remember the study.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with that. I've read some paper or maybe heard it in a podcast. Have you heard where people talking about getting sunlight on your butthole in the morning?
Yeah. They talk about like sunning their balls. I haven't heard the butthole one.
I got to read this paper. Is there a paper on this?
Probably. Yeah. I know there's people who on Instagram, at least, that I've seen that talk about like sunning their balls. I know that like Jack talks about this too all the time on Twitter, how like if you're covering up certain part of your body when you're getting sun, it's not good. You have to expose your full body to it.
All right.
But like that's something we've been doing since antiquity. I mean, we haven't like we weren't walking around naked forever. We've been covering up our bodies forever. Oh, okay. AI says there's no evidence exposing your testicles to sun or tanning them can increase testosterone levels or have any other benefits. In fact, doing so can be harmful.
Can you hear Jack's voice right now?
Yeah.
You know what?
Well, apparently there's a lot of the stuff you learn in medical school, all of the textbooks that you get and you have to study in medical school, depending on whatever category you're in, is like 90% of it is wrong or outdated, according to Jack. And according to some of like the most world-renowned neurosurgeons and neuroscientists from Stanford have even come out and said this. That like all of the textbooks and stuff that you read are really outdated or have like completely false information in them.
Can we ask Grok instead of the Google?
I've never used Grok. That's the XAI?
Yeah, it's good.
Really?
Yeah. And you can put it in fun mode.
Oh, I've heard about this. Yeah.
How do you spell it? G-R-O-C?
No, just go to x.com.
G-R-O-K. Type in scientific research on exposing testicles to sunlight.
What about current ideas?
Now, does this just search Twitter? Early research from 1939 suggests that exposure of the male body to ultraviolet light could significantly increase testosterone levels, specifically when the chest and back are exposed to UV. When the chest and back are exposed to UV light. I lost where I was at. Okay, here we go. testosterone levels reportedly increased by 120%, while exposure of the genital area led to a 200% increase. However, these studies are quite dated and have not been widely replicated under modern scientific standards. Recent commentary and analysis. More recent discussions and analysis on the topic, particularly those found on platforms like X, often reference these historical studies, but also acknowledge the lack of contemporary peer-reviewed research, specifically targeting testicular exposure to
All
sunlight.
right, go to number 4.
Alternate explanations. Some research suggests that if there is any effect from light exposure, it might be due to the stimulation of vitamin D synthesis, which can indirectly influence testosterone levels. However, because
Number 5, the interest in testicle tanning.
I haven't heard of the butthole tanning one though.
I just heard it was like good to get your whole everything spread all out so everything can get some sun back there.
Well, UV light doesn't really penetrate the tissue that much. It doesn't go very deep. Like red light.
Red light's deep.
The red light and infrared light is penetrates your body and your tissue by like 4 to 5 inches, I've heard.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Okay, so in summary, it says, while there's historical basis for suggesting that UV light exposure might increase testosterone, the direct exposure of testicles to the sunlight for this purpose lacks support of contemporary scientific rigorous studies. The potential health risks, including cancer, are well documented, leading health professionals and to generally advise against this practice. Yeah, you can't go to any dermatologist and tell them that sunglasses theory that Alexis was talking about, how not wearing sunglasses in the sun can stop you from skin cancer, or how because they'll all tell you to wear sunscreen and sunglasses. That's the consensus among all dermatologists.
I studied medical neuroscience, and this includes radiology, reading MRIs and brain scans, and studying Parkinson's, myasthenia gravis, you name it, Alzheimer's, dementia. And the more I learn about what truly helps the brain, I get so jaded and I get upset that why don't they teach that in college? Why didn't they talk about any of this? And I've heard many people say that a lot of these universities the curriculum is developed by big pharma or some company with a vetted.
Especially Stanford. Stanford's a big one.
It's public record.
Yeah, there's an article. I'm actually going to pull it up. I have it right here on my Daylight computer. Shout out to Daylight.
Man,
This is the coolest invention ever. Hold on, let me find it. I want to give this guy credit because I just got done reading his article. His name is Nafiz Ahmed, and he wrote this whole this huge 2-part piece on how Google was incubated and funded by CIA and NSA and DARPA, and how the PageRank algorithm and all of the proprietary IP that's used in Google was developed first in DARPA. And then there was these 2 people that are listed in that article from CIA and NSA who were visiting Sergey Brin many times when he was developing it and testing it. And they were funding it, quite literally. So like the implications of the whole thing, basically read the article. I highly recommend it. It's on Medium. It's on his Medium page.
So you're saying the alphabet agencies,
Google
became the alphabet company.
Well,
Isn't it called the alphabet company?
Yeah, Alphabet. So Google was incubated, curated, and funded by CIA and NSA.
Man.
And it was technology from DARPA that they used. So when you think of like the Twitter files and how Twitter was co-opted by, or not co-opted, but infiltrated by like FBI and CIA trying to manage the disinformation going on. Well, Google's a whole nother animal because Google was literally a product of those agencies.
And this is proven.
Yeah. This is his article right here. How the CIA made Google inside the secret network.
Good God.
Fascinating deep dive this guy did. And, you know, there's all these like think tanks that you've never heard of that are these like consensus think tanks where all these people in these agencies just try to figure out how to weaponize the internet for manipulation on a global scale.
Yeah.
I
think most people, I've been involved with many different operation stuff going on back in the day. Most people that are involved in those things, like putting Google algorithm together and all that, most of those people genuinely, in their heart of hearts, believe that they're doing something good for the country.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that. I've met these people when they first started, they were naive enough, and which I would be. Most of us would be. We don't know what's going to happen way down at the end of this pipeline.
Right.
So we're putting this stuff together, and you genuinely feel like a patriot at the time, and then it's embarrassing. So nobody really speaks up at the end. Like, I was a big part of that, and I put that together. So I think that we're assigning. I think a lot of people assign malice to people that had none. And I think there was malice maybe in some of it, but I think the overall thing was like, information is going to be crazy, and this is going to be a war of information. This is going to be a war of ideas, and we need to make sure we get the right ones into the hands of the American people so that they're well informed and they know the right things that are going on, so the American people won't be manipulated. And I think that was probably so many programs start out that way, of like, we need to protect people first, like the Patriot Act. It was like, oh yeah, we need to protect you.
Right. But let's label it this thing that sounds innocent.
Yeah.
The Patriot Act, right? Just mass surveillance on humans. Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I mean, they're huge these are huge organizations with lots of people working in them, working inside of them, and they're not all like, it's the banality of evil, right? Like the people that are working, like exactly what you said. There's like, even in organizations like the CIA, not all those people are bad. Like, are there bad people with bad intentions in there in those organizations? Yeah. And people don't focus on the good things. Like, tell me 10 good things the CIA did and tell me 10 bad things the CIA did. I bet you can't label one. Most people probably can't list one good thing the CIA has ever done. Right. But they can come up with every single conspiracy, from the JFK assassination to Operation Northwoods, the Bay of Pigs, all these things, all the assassinations, MK Ultra, right?
Yeah.
But like, at the end of the day, like, it's just humans with animalistic intentions and the same sort of values and fears that drive all of us, that when you get that level of power and that much money, it's the same thing that would happen to you or me, probably. Like, you want to protect yourself, protect your tribe. You want to take care of your kids, make more and more, another billion, right?
Yeah. Let me just get one more billion in there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna unplug as soon as I get this next billion out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're gonna die eventually, right? And you don't have to deal with any of this anymore, right? You're just gonna protect your family and protect your tribe, and then whatever happens after that. Like, these people aren't necessarily like philosophical thought leaders in human history, or they don't may not understand like all of human history and how this stuff can affect people 100 years down the road. Yeah, it's like capitalism gone off the rails.
There's an old quote of the only way for a society, I'm paraphrasing this, but the only way for a society to thrive is when men plant trees whose shade they will never enjoy. So
that's good.
All just future focused on the life of the next generation instead of our own. And that's the same when I teach people how to have discipline in their life. It's the exact same thing as a country. My present tense self places more priority over what me in the future than me right now. If I only prioritize right now, I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to drink too much. I'm going to miss that exam in the morning. I'm going to eat too much cheesecake. Fill in the blank. I'm going to do drugs. If I prioritize my future self ahead of my present self, I will always be looking backwards with gratitude instead of regret. So my past tense self will always be someone I'm grateful for, not regretful of. And I think that's the goal in our life. That's the goal for a nation. There's no difference. Like, do I have the ability to forego enjoying something now so that future me, or maybe future me generation, will be able to enjoy it? I think that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that definitely gets lost. That gets lost. You know, like there's this saying that money is like a magnifying glass. It makes you more of who you really are.
Yeah.
like the more money you have, it just magnifies your deepest motivation, your deepest drives that make you into who you are. And I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening with the people that are, in charge, like whether it be politicians or CEOs of huge companies. And it doesn't necessarily, being a good person doesn't make you the head of one of these big companies, or the head, or be able to climb the ladder of one of these big agencies inside of the United States. Like, I've had people in here that explain some of the folks, some of like the
Andy.
Yeah, Andy's explained. Yeah, I just had him in here with this guy John Kiriakou, and they were talking about some of the people that have made it to the highest ranks inside the CIA, and he's saying these people, they're like yes men. What they do is they'll do whatever it takes to please the person above them so they can essentially climb the ladder.
Yeah, it's a chameleon effect. Mm-hmm. And I think I've studied psychopathy for a very long time, and I think a lot of those positions, to get to the top, there's a degree of psychopathy that you need to get up there in today's world. You've got to be, and I think maybe that's the reason we're looking at what we're looking at. Like, all psychopathy starts with separation, all of it, everything. So if you just think of ego, me having an ego means I'm separate from Danny, right? Me having less of that is like we're similar. Me having way less of that is like we're one. We're like the same thing. But if you take ego way to the top, that's where you get psychopathy. You have psychopath behavior there. It's just centralized. Everything is different from me. And those people will memorize, like a library card catalog, human emotions and facial expressions and words and phrases and everything that they will ever need to survive in the world and to rise up to the top of leadership. And everybody talks about psychopaths as if they're bad people. I don't think they are, and none of them chose to be that way. And most psychopaths don't even know that they're psychopaths. They just think we're all the same. They think we do what they do. And I think they just recruit a lot of this. And one of the best illustrations of this is Dr. Robert Hare, who's the #1 researcher on psychopathy. He's the guy who developed the checklist, the famous psychopath checklist to diagnose a psychopath. He said, if you could just imagine yourself in your apartment, you're wanting to go get something to eat, and you say, I'm going to walk down there to the fried chicken place. I'm going to go get some fried chicken. So you exit your apartment, you walk down the sidewalk, and within 100 yards, you see some police lights, and there's a crash scene. There's a horrible, horrible scene there. Let's say you see a mom holding her little daughter who's passed away and bleeding, and the mom is crying and screaming and all of this. And the first thought in your head while you're looking at this scene is fried chicken. I'm going to get that fried chicken. And then turning right to the restaurant and go pick up your food, getting back to the apartment, eating your chicken. And then after you brush your teeth that night, you're looking at yourself in the mirror going, trying to mimic all of those faces that you saw on the street from all the grief and sadness and despair. You're just staring at yourself doing that in the mirror to practice those facial expressions. That's what a psychopath is.
And what are the conditions of does that develop in early childhood? Does that go back to, is that all about like those first years and when you're a toddler and how you're raised and what you're exposed to? Does that start then, or can that start later?
It can start later. There's a genetic and an environmental predispositions that you can have for it. So you can have a genetic predisposition, which means your amygdala is a little bit bigger than it should be. A few other things going on in your brain. But then you have all of those genetic factors and you have a great childhood and you don't grow up to be a psychopath. Those genes decide not to express themselves. So then you have somebody else who they get into a traumatic event. Maybe they have, this can even go back to some cases they've shown the mother getting sick during the 3rd trimester expressed those genes. So I think it's a bunch of theories right now. As far as I know, I'm no expert, but having those genes expressed means that you're born, and the next thing you know, like my kid is shoving needles into our cat or our dog, and just to see, the dog's reaction and stuff like that.
Jesus.
So you see that at a pretty young age, and there's no way out. There's no counseling. There's no therapy. There's no psychedelic journey that you can go on and like reverse some of that stuff.
Interesting.
And it's pretty similar. Narcissism is maybe, I don't think it's on that spectrum, but narcissism is like high ego, right? It's a high ego problem, but it's rooted in more insecurity. I have seen narcissism. If you go to therapy, if you have narcissistic personality disorder, a diagnostic disorder, and you go to therapy, they're essentially teaching you how to fake stuff. Here's how to ask people questions about themselves. Danny, how are you doing? Mm-hmm. How's your wife? How's the family going? And here's how to be open and vulnerable. Here's how to be a good person. That's just masking. They're not helping themselves. They're not really changing. I have seen psychedelics do some amazing stuff with narcissism, with people kind of stepping out of their ego. It was a huge deal for me the first time I did it. I felt like I lost 40 pounds of ego the first time that I did psychedelics. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe a bunch of deployment stuff kind of fell off with that. But it's a great thing to see. And I don't remember where I was going with that.
Psychopathy, and you're saying that psychedelics can't fix it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot you can do.
Has there been have people tried to experiment with psychedelics on people that have severe psychopathy or psychopaths?
I can't cite any research or anything like that. I guarantee
that would be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
to get what their reaction would be and to hear them talk about it, or put them on like a crazy DMT trip,
Yeah, ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca. Right. Yeah, because the ayahuasca has more of an effect because it takes forever.
Yes, like 12 hours. Yeah.
I've never done ayahuasca. The first time I did DMT was with Danny Goler when he was on the show.
Yeah.
Shout out to Danny for hooking us up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome,
I was terrified. Because I've heard so many stories.
Did he have to kind of like hold your hand and it's okay? It's good.
Oh yeah, he was great. He walked me
too.
through it, held my hand and walked me through it like I was a child, explained to me what to expect. Like we did this Wim Hof breathing thing before it. I don't know what that did.
Prayer? Did you do it?
Yeah. We did the prayer.
I love that. I love doing that. I think, man, there's something. I think the more certain somebody is that they've got life figured out and like what we're doing here on this planet, the more skeptical I am of their opinions. I don't think we have jack shit figured out, man. I don't think we know what this is. Because this lady was talking to Stephen Hawking one time, and this is on recording, but he said, well, what happens if you get to the end of the universe? She said, well, that's their end. And he said, okay, so you reach the end. What's on the other side of that? What's outside of that wall? They're like, we have no clue what any of this stuff is. And I think that's okay, just for us to say, we don't know yet. And I think that we need more scientists that can utter the phrase, as far as we know now. Just that one phrase. You don't have to call yourself a dummy. You just have to say, we don't have everything figured out. And every generation thinks they've got it all figured out and laughs at the generation before them. And every generation will get laughed at.
Yeah.
So we're going to have stuff that we believe in right now that in a couple hundred years will be the equivalent of the Earth is flat, or we're at the center of the entire universe and everything revolves around us.
Yeah.
We'll be laughed at. And we just got to be okay with that. And just as far as we know right now, just that one phrase, I wish we would hear more often.
Yeah, I that's why I thought that when I first saw Danny's video that he made for his documentary about that DMT laser thing, I was just fucking blown away.
Me too. Yeah. So I saw it on, someone ripped it off of TikTok and then stuck it on X, and I saw it on X. And I'm a behavior profiler. So I'm watching the video reactions of the people that are seeing the stuff, and then I'm watching Danny's behavior. I was so, I don't know, intrigued and about what was going on. I tracked Danny's ass down within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, called him, and said, hey, dude, I'm going to fly you to my house. I need you to tell me all about this. I want to know everything that you know. It's just fascinating to me.
What were you looking for? Like when you were watching the videos of him talking about it, like, cause you're obviously, you're trying to sniff out bullshit, right? So like what specifically are you paying attention to when you watch those videos and listen to people talking?
The first thing would be performance. Am I seeing performative behavior? Someone over-exaggerating a reaction to what they're seeing on the wall. Someone zooming in the camera a little bit too much and not trying to get an authentic shot of what's going on. Any kind of over-exaggeration and them trying to over-explain it to the camera, what they're seeing, and no one tried to explain it. They were just awestruck. They didn't try to say, oh, here's exactly what I'm seeing right away. They had that pause of awe, just being in awe for a few seconds. That's what did it for me. And then the humility of Danny's just super humble, good dude.
Yeah.
And that comes through. That's why you don't have to be a profiler for that. You get a gut feeling, like when we get those gut feelings about people, those gut feelings are produced by who that person is when we're not looking. Gut feelings are not produced by the behavior in the moment. It's produced by their behavior in the moment being incongruent with who they are off camera or when nobody's looking.
Right. That's what they call it, gut the second brain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think's going on there in that laser? You think it's ripping a hole in the matrix? You got any ideas? You got any theories?
I have no
What's
idea.
your gut tell you?
Well, the gut says that we're seeing something that our bodies were not meant to or not designed to. Like we didn't evolve to see. It would just be like if you did DMT and then found out that you could squeeze your ear really hard and you could see the infrared light spectrum. It would be you'd be like, oh shit, I can see heat now. I can see like a snake. And maybe we're seeing something that maybe an animal or somebody else has access to already. Maybe it's just another thing that we just don't know about yet. And it's always been there.
Yeah. So what I saw when I looked into it was I saw like, you know how you could see like the speckles if you look really close to that laser, you could see all the little speckles because it was projected on a white door when I was looking at it. And I could see like, and he was kind of like guiding me, showing me, like telling me like how to see it. And I was like looking at it and like relaxing my focus. And I was seeing like a pocket of space behind the door.
Yeah.
And it was very palpable. Pocket of space
the depth
was behind the door. Like I could almost reach through it and feel it. Like I was seeing through the door.
Yeah.
And then I was like looking at all the little moving speckles of light. And then I focused in on those more and tried to look through those more. And then they turned into like gears all connected to each other.
I saw the gears too.
Like millions of gears just connected and turning. I didn't see any of the code stuff, but like, then again, I was kind of like, this was kind of like 3 or 4 minutes after I did the DMT. So I wasn't like in the peak of the experience. It was kind of more of like the downward afterwards, the downslope of the come down of it or whatever you call it. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or whatever, or if it just takes, different people see different things. But,
so I
would love to see some sort of like wide-ranging study, like a placebo-controlled experiment on this. If there could be some money that could get behind it somehow.
Yeah. I'd rather see 10,000 people experience it than some study at a university. I'd rather have a huge movement. Because that would fund the study by itself. Just so many people. And I think there's like a subreddit on it as well. But what I'd like to see is what would happen if I have like ski goggles. All right, just humor me for a second. And this is what I was thinking, like after I did it the first time. So what if I had ski goggles that had like white, like almost like a wax paper surface to them? So like a translucent but not transparent, so the outside of the ski goggles would look like the back of my iPhone, right? And somehow project a laser onto that entire surface from outside. So you're looking at this.
So it's like diffusing it?
Yeah, so it's diffusing laser light, but you can kind of move your head and look. So now you're physically able to move where you're looking.
Right.
So you'd need some kind of little head apparatus to like shine it down
Right.
and diffuse it onto your face. And Danny said the green and blue lasers have different code.
Really?
Yeah. You see different type of code, and everybody sees the same different type of code.
Huh.
Which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, that's bizarre, man. It's just like I can't figure out with this DMT stuff if it's like, is this just like the inner parts of the brain just opening up and like showing you things that you don't normally see?
Right.
You know that whole brain filter hypothesis, how like there's so much more in this space that we're in that we can't perceive because our brain just filters everything down for us to be able to survive and get through the day and eat and stuff like that. But if you take this DMT or psychedelic or whatever it is, it strips away this barrier, and now you're exposed to more of what's already really there.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll go deep really quick on this one. If observing something collapses wave function,
Yes.
and our ability to see and like interpret things is expanded by DMT, then are we seeing something that is there, but is also that I'm obsessed with Carl Jung, all of his work. Are we seeing some kind of collective code that we are all kind of co-creating? Are we all collapsing that? So then the one time that I have done DMT, I was shown this map of the world of gravity. Like if you could map, like, you know, like Verizon has that coverage map, right? Mm. But what if you could map where the gravity centers are? In the inside of like, I could see all of the Smoky Mountains up in the Northeast. I could see all the Rocky Mountains down in like the southwestern area, and they were empty because no one was observing the inside of the mountains. And the gravity was concentrated in the cities where people were collapsing wave function. I saw that on DMT. Not saying that there's some science behind it, but I just thought that was unbelievable.
And you were looking at some sort of map?
Like a map of this country where you could see like New York, LA, Houston, Chicago, where all this gravity was centered right around those areas. Yeah.
Wow.
So ever since that day, I always thought in terms of like, maybe this is some kind of a wave function, form of collapsing of a wave function.
Right. Yeah, like is that parking lot really out there right now?
Well, it is for the Uber drivers.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, but if no one was observing it, would it be there?
Right.
That's wild to think about, man. So how long did it take you to write this book?
It's probably 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And you were saying that the epileptic episodes were what inspired it.
Yeah. It started onsetting, and I'm just worried that I'm going to go downhill, and I need to dump everything that's inside of my brain that I teach to intel people, to companies, everything, all in one book.
And was the act of writing, was that therapeutic for it at all? Did that help you, or was that just sort of, was it more of just a drive from this health scare that you were having?
I think it was a drive from the health scare. It was therapeutic knowing that like if I can get this done, then like I have a parachute for my kids.
Right.
And the third part I think is also hypergraphia. It's just that side effect of temporal lobe epilepsy, just an impulsive need to write nonstop. I would fill like one of these up every 2 months, just nonstop.
Wow.
So I wrote my first.
So you were writing with a pen and paper, not typing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I wrote this on paper first with like a pencil. Not word for word, but
yeah,
most of the book. And it took 3 or 4 of those things. Leuchtturm, whatever you call it.
Was there anything, so going back to the epilepsy stuff, was there anything other than the methylene blue that helped you?
Yeah. Just going on one journey, like a mushroom journey, like a 4.5, 5 gram journey, that was significant to kind of start kicking everything off. then taking a daily turkey tail, then I mix in beetroot, and then very high dose melatonin, super high dose.
Really? Melatonin?
Yeah. High dose melatonin is one of the most powerful, absolutely powerful. I put it up there with methylene blue. And high dose melatonin is one of the most powerful antioxidants in the world. And it's made in your brain. And most people are like, well, if I take a lot of it, my body's not going to produce. Your body, there's no rebound effect whatsoever. But the thing is that your liver will destroy 80 to 90% of melatonin when you take it orally. So what you usually take from like Walgreens or CVS is like a 2 milligram, maybe a 4 milligram. I take 200 at sunset. And it's a suppository.
Suppository?
Yeah. I'll show you how to put it in.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yeah. So it bypasses the liver. So that's called the first pass effect. So when our liver, all the processes in our liver just destroy that melatonin. So when you take melatonin through a suppository, you're absorbing like 90% instead of destroying 90%. And it's also, it helps to get rid of reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species, just like methylene blue. And it's also radioprotective. It can protect your body from radiation damage.
Really?
Yeah.
So like going on an airplane, you'll take it before an airplane ride?
Yeah. Take it for an airplane ride. I won't say that this is maybe it's proven in some study, but I went to Jamaica, and we go to Jamaica 2 or 3 times a year.
Really?
Yeah. So I will take melatonin, and I burn easily. I'm just like a basic white dude, and I will burn pretty easily in the sun. I'll take melatonin, and I do not need sunscreen. It's unbelievable.
Wow. Yeah, I heard that they have a lot of big psychedelic mushroom farms down there.
Yeah, they're totally legal.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the folks that are farming it and processing it down there are companies here that are like getting it all done down there to like get through like the legal loopholes, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty like a booming market down there. But there's also I heard there's like a ton of crime down there as well.
And that's only if you're in the city, like Kingston.
Right.
Like if you're in Kingston or any of the big cities, there's some, but it's not that bad.
Right.
I stay up in the very top of the island in the middle part, which is called Ocho Rios. And it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Great spot. Like in Western society, we compete with each other just as a like a standard default. Let's compete on status and wealth and popularity and all of that stuff.
Right.
And it's almost like a national culture for the Jamaican people just to kind of compete on gratitude. And it's not something like they teach in school. It's just how it is. And it is. I've been to a bunch of countries. I've been all over the world. I've never been to a place where there's so little ego.
Really?
And so much enjoyment. Yeah.
Wow.
Just the most incredible human beings on earth.
What is it about Jamaica that makes it like that?
I don't know. I think it's the people and the culture, just how they are, how they grew up. And the native Jamaicans were more like Mayan. They had more of a Mayan appearance. And Columbus and his crew murdered like 99% of them.
Right. Yeah.
It's a sad story. But Jamaica is like...
a lot of epigenetic trauma.
Yeah. But man, it's those people. It's so hard to explain. Like the people, like just the first time I got to Jamaica, here's an example. We were walking out in the main part of the town, and there's a homeless guy walking past us. Like we're about to pass this guy that's very obviously either homeless or, very close to being homeless. And as he's approaching us, I'm instantly, as this Western brain of mine is like, he's going to ask for money. I've got to say, sorry, I don't have cash. All he said was like, "It's your first time?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's our first time in Jamaica." He's like, "I hope it's the best time ever." And he just kept on walking.
Really?
Didn't wait. And like, as a Western person, I cannot process, why would he stop? How does it benefit him? Because that was what was in my head. Like, that's how we think in our society. Why would someone do something that doesn't benefit themselves?
Yeah.
And that culture is not wired that way. So I'll give you the second time we went to the same hotel, and the guy who gets your bag at the front of the hotel, his name's Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
He grabbed our bags. He tells me and my wife, "Hey, Chase, hey, Michelle." Then the person at the front desk said, "Hey, Chase, hey, Michelle." Person upstairs, the maid walking down the hallway said, "Hey, Chase, hey, Michelle."
Mm-hmm.
But people that I don't remember even talking to. So I asked later on, I asked one of the managers, like, whatever CRM you guys use to like get the employees to memorize people's names is unbelievable. And she said, "We don't do that. They actually remember your name." It's because that's my Western brain thinking.
Right.
Why would it benefit them? But they just genuinely care. And it's so hard for our culture to process that. Man, it's a magical place.
I've been to a few places on trips where it's similar to that, like when you go to another place, like in the Caribbean or like Central America, Costa Rica, or any of those places, and you spend enough time down there, there's this like weird thing that happens to you when you're there, and then you come back and then you're kind of like shocked by normal society. It's this like you have this realization like, wow, like shit is way better down there.
Yeah.
It's not as like high stress, dopamine slaves attached to screens all day, every day that are like constantly trying to compete for attention. It just makes you.
You're like Neo going back into the pod.
That is what it's like. It really is, man.
It is. It's like you're closer to reality, like the real what reality actually is down there. Because there's a French philosopher named Jean Baudrillard. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, I have heard of him.
Okay. He wrote this book, Simulation and Simulacra, to where everything around us nowadays is a simulation of something. Walmart is a simulation of a market. And then you look at the food, there's a picture of it that doesn't represent what the actual food looks like. So it's symbols that point to symbols that point to symbols. You go to Disneyland, it's just like, that's the idea of what our society is. Like, can we make a hyper real and hyper perfect simulation of something that is real? And then 90% of Disneyland is a simulation of something that has no original, like Cinderella,
right,
or Peter Pan, or fill in the blank. So it's a simulation of a simulation that has no original.
Right.
So we continue to get this labeling, and it's just arrows that point to something. And most of those arrows are just kind of pointing in this circular way that don't have any origin to point back to. So much of our life is a simulated thing. The light's fake. The signs are fake. You go to McDonald's, you know damn well the burger's not going to look like it does on the menu. Everything, we're just so...
Hyper-normalization.
Yeah, we prefer it. And we vote for the candidate that fakes it the best. We vote for people that just say the right words. That's all we need them to do. And if you go look at an analysis on any news channel, all the news channels, why did this side lose or why did this side win? They said the right things. We should have said this and we should have aligned with this group and said these things. It's all about artificialness. Yeah. And that was what Jean Baudrillard was really writing about. It's like we're living, we're, even if it's not digital, we're in a simulation. We're in a weird simulated reality anyway. Yeah.
No, and it's in the most developed societies too, where it's like some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier on that big graph of like when you think about the foundation of the mammalian brain and the drives, like the human drives, that is what like we're compelled to innovate and get better and acquire more. And that's sort of what is like this never ending cycle that civilization is on, to advance more and to make more money and to make more things, which disconnects us even more and more from nature.
Yeah.
And if you go to the cultures that aren't doing any of that, that aren't paying attention to it, that aren't, caught up in this, cyclical loop trying to increase their GDP or focus on all these things that are also huge stressors on our bodies, I feel like that's what gives you that shock of like sort of stepping out of the matrix for a little bit. And I wonder all the time, like how many cycles like this has civilization gone through? Has this happened before?
Yeah.
Have we just killed ourselves with technology and innovation and But the thing is, it's like, how do you evolve out of that though? Like it's a evolution. It's millions of years of evolution that have got us to this point. So how do you break the loop or get on another pathway? It seems like it's almost impossible for us to get on a correct course, right? It seems like we're on this bullet train to annihilation. It
really does. And you go to these cultures that don't have that. Like when you go down there, you said Costa Rica or Jamaica, it's like you feel like 15 pounds lighter, and you wonder like, what's different? And you're wondering like, oh, maybe I slept well. Maybe I ate something different. No, it's just you're surrounded by real people,
right?
In a real environment. There's probably nature all around you, which is exactly what your ancestors experienced. You're just closer to not confusing the shit out of the ancestors that are kind of living in our head. And if you think about the cells in our bodies, if we're eating cells and we're eating stuff that our ancestors' cells wouldn't understand, we get sick.
Right.
That's all it is. And I think we're just seeing it. It feels different because we're in a place where our bodies were designed to be. We're in with real people.
Right.
We're in with a community, and we live in a town or we're in a city that's small enough that reputation matters. That's the biggest thing. Like if I live in if I'm in New York City, my reputation doesn't matter at all. You can be rude to everyone,
right?
Because you'll never see them again.
Yeah.
We don't depend on our tribe anymore, and if we stop depending on tribe, we lose empathy. And then you have things like the bystander effect.
Yeah,
where people will just step over a murder victim, which has happened before.
It's diffusion of responsibility.
Yeah. And there's a great video about this where they did a study at Liverpool Street Station in London. And this woman laid on the ground and like people were stepping over her. She was holding her stomach, begging for help, not just kind of like laying there. She was openly calling out for help and crying out in pain. And people were just stepping over her.
Really?
Yeah.
When was this done?
I don't know. Philip Zimbardo, the guy who ran the Stanford Prison Experiment. He has a new thing on YouTube. Oh, it's not new.
The Stanford Prison Experiment?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that.
Oh my gosh. Let's not do that.
Am I living under a rock?
Yeah, leave that door shut.
Don't tell me to leave it shut. Now I want to crack it open.
So Dr. Zimbardo did this experiment where essentially we got 100 college students, and I made a fake prison inside of an academic building. And I said, you 50 are prisoners. You 50 are guards. No rules. Prisoners, go get in your cell, and then like, boom, just let it go. And it talked about how fast authority, even if it's fake, authority can start corrupting and like abuse of power. So everybody got pissed off that Dr. Zimbardo did that experiment. So he started a YouTube channel. He's an older guy. He's probably 78 or so now, called the Heroic Imagination Project. And man, is it good. It talks about all these experiments, but then how you can not fall into those traps. How can you get out of getting your head in the bystander effect? But just looking at the bystander effect, it's a funny phenomenon. But if I explain to you, let's say I walked in here this morning. This is the first time we met each other was today. I said, Danny, you wouldn't believe it. I was outside of my hotel, and people were filming a woman getting stabbed. A guy was standing there and filming a woman getting stabbed to death. You would think that person was a psychopath. That is the behavior of a psychopath, but it's the collective behavior of everyone in large cities.
Oh, wow.
So Dr. Robert Hare, who we talked about before, said psychopaths are attracted to large cities. I think large cities are factories for psychopathy.
Whoa.
All of the behaviors that we talk about with crowd psychology and how crowds behave and how they don't help each other, it's all psychopathic behavior, but it's universal because it's in a large city. And everybody does it. It's not a big deal. It's psychopathy. But it's temporary. So if I lived in a semi-large city, it was in Chesapeake, Virginia, and I moved in the population of the town I live in right now is 2,000.
That's nice.
Yeah.
The population of this town is like 2 million.
It's crazy. But like,
and then combine that with just all the information. that we're bombarded with every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's just so like an overwhelming amount of information to the point where it's almost worse than it's almost better to have less information than it is to have more information. And people are obsessed with just getting as much information as possible every single day.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, which is a huge thing that comes up in this podcast, as you are well aware. When we try to Google something, it's hard to find the truth of on anything, you know, depending on where you're looking or who's, you know, giving you that information or what their sources are. So like, I wonder how that is going to affect people, or how, you know, how it affects people today, and then how it's going to affect people in the future, or how it even affects like the human brain when it's like, you know, and we know that for the most part that we're getting information that's tainted or skewed in one direction or another. We're well aware of it.
Yeah. And I'd say worrying about the future is just us right now making those choices. Maybe just 100 of us right now listening, or 10,000 people that are listening right now, is I'm going to prioritize my kids getting in nature, getting away from that blue light, and doing everything that Jack was talking about, and just getting my kids to a place where I'll sacrifice for them. I'm going to move out of the city, or I'm going to get to a place where I don't need a lot of information. You know what the front page of the newspaper of the town I live in was just a week ago when it showed up? A stolen bike. Front page news. A bicycle was stolen. And that's me seeing that as bad news was beautiful. Like I want to just wake up to that as the news that I get. What's going on around my community that I need. Our brains were not designed to handle over maybe 300-400 people.
Right.
It's just not. That's why empathy disappears. That's why psychopathy starts coming in. We can't have empathy for that many people. We just can't. We're not possible.
Yeah. Speaking of overwhelming amounts of information coming in, I know you talked about it on that video you sent me, but what are your thoughts on those New Jersey drones and like what the possibilities are for it? And do you think there is some sort of like modern strategic deception, or do you think it could be some sort of like limited hangout that's still happening like across the media, or to get people to divert their attention somewhere else to distract them?
So give you like a quick rule of thumb. For any weird thing that happens, I ask myself maybe 3 or 4 questions here. Number 1, is it happening in proximity to a large political event, like an election or an inauguration? Number 2, am I seeing it repeated on multiple news cycles where people are using similar phrases? It's like if I spot similar phrases, I'm seeing a psyop. So if I'm seeing copy paste along 7 different networks and they're all kind of saying the same thing, I'm seeing something that might be a psyop. And the next would be, if I'm not seeing the government intervene in what's going on and they're remaining semi-silent. They put out a statement today. I don't know if you saw that.
Really?
Some kind of statement, and it was just the most meaningless blather. It was like just a couple of paragraphs.
Who put it out?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't know, but you just probably type in government statement drones and it'll be coming up. But if you're seeing it's close to a political event, it's being repeated, and then the final way to tell if something is a psyop is stories evolve over time. If you never hear anything about it, if something is a psyop, it tends to go away after it has served its purpose. So you're not going to hear any more about the drone. If it's a psyop, you're not going to keep hearing about it if it's serving its purpose. Because when psyops are in play, they're in play and then they're out. Then they're done with the news cycle because someone's influencing the news cycle to serve a purpose, and it no longer serves the purpose. So now go back to talking about whatever, something else. So you see something disappear from the news cycle, just rewind and look at what the event was that was hiding underneath it.
This is ABC. Having closely examined the technical data and tips from concerned citizens, we assess that the sightings of the today are included a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircrafts, helicopters, and stars mistakenly reported as drones, the joint statement said. Whose joint statement is this? Click on the joint statement link. The Homeland Security, DHS, FBI, FAA, and DOD joint statement. December 16th, yesterday. Wow.
It's nothing.
Wow.
It's the whole thing says nothing.
That's insane. Well, to give them credit, if they are looking for what some people think to be is some sort of rogue nuclear weapon, you don't want to let the people know that. It's going to sow complete chaos in society. U.S. NRC. Okay, what is this website? What is NRC?
U.S. NRC.
Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Okay. Event notification report for December 13th, 2024. 4 days ago. U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission Operations Center. All right, what are we looking at here? What is this?
So a nuke or a piece of nuclear material went missing. So even if let's say a dentist's office gets robbed and they get an x-ray machine stolen, that machine most likely runs off of something called cobalt, which is a radioactive element.
Okay.
And that has to get reported. It's a big deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there are, even if you order, let's say you ordered 30 elevator counterweights.
Go up, Steve.
So have you ever been in an elevator and you see a glass elevator and you see those giant stack of lead weights that kind of go up and down to counterweight the elevator?
Right.
If you order a bunch of those, you'll be on an FBI watch list because you can shield these things and hide these things using big, thick pieces of lead. And the cheapest and most effective way to do that is using elevator counterweights that you can buy at a junkyard. And a lot of times, if you go to a place that makes granite countertops or anything like that, granite can set off a large concentration of lots of granite, like a truck full of granite, can also hide it because granite gives off radioactive isotopes all the time that are harmless, but it can give off the same kind of signature radioactive isotope. So I'm not an expert in any of this.
So you're saying the lead of those elevator weights can shield radiation?
Can shield it from being detected, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is saying that the Nazha Cancer Center is the licensee of, whatever that means, Newfield, New Jersey, license number, emergency class is non-emergency, organization Glenn Dental, is this guy's name, I guess? Or that's the organization?
Maybe it was. It was it. Oh, that says Dental.
Dental. Okay.
Okay.
Keep going. Event text. Agreement state report. Source lost in transit. The following information was provided in the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection via email. The licensee reported to NJDEP on December 3rd, 2024 that the GE68 pin source that they sent for disposal has been lost in transit on December 2nd. What is that? The GE68 pin source.
Let's Google that.
Yeah. Copy and paste that into Google.
Maybe Grok.
GE68 pins.
Maybe not Google.
Maybe not Google. Yeah, copy that and put it in the Grok. It's a specialized radioactive calibration tool used in medical imaging, particularly.
For PET scans.
Oh, that's what that was. Okay, so this is the model right here. Because whenever I Googled that.
Oh, it was sent for disposal. Go back to the report.
That's the.
Okay, it was sent for disposal and it has been lost in transit on December 2nd, 2024. The source is Eckert and Ziegler model HEGL 0132, which with current approximate activity of 0.267 MCI. Shipping container arrived at its destination damaged and empty. The licensee has filed claims with the shipper. If the source is not located within 30 days, the licensee will follow up with a full written report to include the root causes and corrective actions. Interesting. What does this say? The material event contains a less than Cat 3 level of radioactive material.
Yeah, look that one up. Cat 3 level.
is not safely managed or secured or protected could cause permanent injury to a person who handled it or otherwise contains.
So that was December
back to the
3rd.
report.
Is there a more recent? If you go to the top, it says incident numbers, and they're in blue, or event numbers. This is 57455.
Yeah, what is that?
There's 57456 that happened afterward.
You want to go to this one, the first one?
No, we're on 55 right now.
How about 70? The most recent one?
I don't know.
Sure.
You got the steering wheel.
All the way at the bottom. Okay, so invalid actuation of containment isolation valves.
Probably not it.
And that was-
Interesting. So this is saying some sort of like some sort of medical CAT scanner device or something like that went missing off of a shipping container that was damaged.
They shot one down. NYPD did last night.
Really?
Yeah. There's, if you go on Twitter right now and type in drone shot down NYPD.
This drone was shot down recently in New Jersey, apparently.
No, there's a picture of the NYPD holding it with the black beanies on and stuff. Yeah, they're shooting them down.
Whoa. Keep going. See if you can find a cool picture.
For like $8, if you have a 12 gauge, for I think $8 or $9, you can get
Yeah.
a box of shells that have a net that's designed to shoot down drones.
Really? And it captures them?
Yeah, capture in the net.
No way.
That's cool.
Super cheap.
Go to media. Click on media. No photos.
Wait, I'd take off NJ.
Just drone shot down NYPD.
There it is.
Which
On
one?
the left. Far left, right there.
That one? Whoa. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yo, can you interview James for me, man? Ask him what happened.
So did you get contact with the culprit, aka Islam?
Yo, James, how you
So
missed that, bro?
Amagy Incorporated is funded by BlackRock.
Really?
Steve, will you look that up? If
What
you
is
have time?
Amagy Inc?
Oh, yeah.
Introducing ammonia as energy.
Okay, so now go back to Grok and just type in Amagy BlackRock.
Amagy Inc. and BlackRock's relationship, investment and
Boom.
partnership. Ooh, BlackRock has indeed invested in Amagy Inc. This relationship was highlighted in various posts on X through the news article. Okay, but what does that mean, that BlackRock invested in Amagy?
It's just BlackRock's like in the middle of everything that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, they invest in so much shit.
Even the kid who shot Trump.
Yeah, they was in a BlackRock commercial,
Yeah.
right? How crazy is that?
It's like,
Now, is that like one of those things we're talking about? Is that like strategic deception? You know, is that like the monkey mask in the cockpit, having him in a BlackRock commercial?
I don't know. It just seems like this was made for TV.
Yes.
Everything that's happened in the last 5 years. Just
Yes.
straight out of, what did Joe Rogan say? He said, like, this season of America is,
Is the wildest.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's the wildest one yet. There's too many answers to this. It's almost like they want us chasing our tails.
overload.
Yes, it is overload. I don't know. You pulled this one up. I don't even know who Benny Hinn is.
Oh, he's the, wait, really quick. So Benny Hinn is a evangelical pastor.
Mm-hmm.
He is world renowned for healing and using the Spirit of God to heal people and all that stuff. And
These people are all falling over. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Take it! Take the fresh breath of the Spirit!
let me start by saying this. There's a chance and maybe a good possibility. He believes that what he's doing is the Lord's work. That he's not deliberately using hypnosis and all that kind of stuff. There's a chance, because you hear him say, I don't know how this all works. I don't know what's going on.
Right.
So maybe that's true. And I'll just go off of that assumption. We'll assume the best
Okay.
about him. So when a stage hypnosis show starts, and we're talking like, have you ever been to one?
No.
Like a comedy hypnosis?
No.
You need to go. If you ever have a chance, they're worth it.
Okay. Is this guy still in business?
I don't know.
I'll have to go to one of his if he's still around.
One of his
No, I mean a hypnosis show, an actual hypnosis.
Oh, this
like
is
at
not
a comedy club.
Oh, no.
So in a comedy club or a mass group hypnosis show where you would demonstrate hypnosis, one of the first things you do is kind of get the crowd riled up. But the second thing you do is demonize the people who are not going to go into trance. Demonize those people. And so I got a good friend of mine, Rich Guzzi. He's a stage hypnotist, comedian, hilarious dude. He starts off his act by saying, you might be one of these people, but there's always one dickhead. There's always one dickhead who won't go along with the crowd. There's always going to be one of those people. You might be that person. If you're looking around the table, you don't see one of them, maybe you're that person. So it's always, you want people to disidentify. So remember, it's talking about identity. Who am I? So there's always going to be one of those people. And so what we're going to be doing is something that's good for you. It's something that's fun. No photography is going to be allowed. So just automatically addressing all the concerns very covertly, but without anybody asking any questions.
Yeah.
And then some people are worried about this. So here, let me tell you what hypnosis is. It's not a coma. It's not sleep. You're not going to be deaf. You'll hear my voice the entire time. You're going to remain in complete control. You're going to be doing this voluntarily, absolutely voluntarily. And it's going to feel absolutely fantastic. And 15 minutes of hypnosis is like a 3-hour nap. It's equal to a 3-hour nap. I made all those statistics up, but it would sound something like that.
Right.
So this crowd is primed as tribal hypnosis. And you'll see people do this to convince people of facts. Like if you watch the John Oliver show, for example, it'll be a rapid fact that they want you to believe, followed by immediate laughter. So you're not really criticizing it. You're hearing a lot of other people laughing so that your brain focuses on tribe and says, okay, lots of people are laughing. It must be true. Bam. Then they'll throw a joke in there before you can critically analyze any of the information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's every episode. Many different shows, not just John. So what's happening is, so hypnosis is a mixture of suggestibility, focus, and dissociation. Just those three things. So what creates the suggestibility is expectancy. Remember we talked about that. That was one of the things on the 6 things that influence human beings. So expectancy means I know what's going to happen when I walk up on stage. I know what's going to happen when he waves his coat. If you do a blind placebo study where he goes up to a bunch of strangers at a Yankees game and waves his coat, they're all going to be like, what is this guy doing? Because there's no expectancy that happens there. But these people know what's going to happen.
Right.
So if I'm going to, let's say, one thing that people think is really cool that I can do, I can take somebody in the middle of a bar or restaurant and just drop them on the ground like that. And they'll just lay there 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, just like they're unconscious. But one of the ways I do it is building a lot of expectancy and compliance. Expectancy and compliance. So let's say I'm doing that. Let me show you how this works in a bar, and then I want you to make the correlations yourself.
Okay.
So let's say, have you ever been hypnotized before?
No.
Okay. Well, it's actually a fun experience, and there's different ways that some people can go deeply into hypnosis. Some people can't. If you have an IQ below 90, you can't be hypnotized. It's been proven.
That explains why I haven't been hypnotized.
I made that up.
Oh, okay.
But so do you see what I'm starting to do? I'm starting to go down remember I told you one of the needs is intelligence. And so we call the ability to be hypnotized unconscious power. And some people have low power, some people have high power. So now I'm addressing strength and power needs, right? So some people have a better connection with their unconscious mind. You see high-performing athletes, high-performing CEOs, they have that perfect connection with their unconscious mind. They're the easiest people to hypnotize. Now I just hit significance on that needs map. So every way that you could view yourself as needing something from another person, I've just hit them all. So actually, you know what? Stand right here, and then so I'll have somebody stand up, stand right here. So I've just given them an order. I didn't ask, and they complied. I'd say, all right, come a little closer to me. Next order, compliance. All right, now spread your feet just a little bit further apart. All right, great. A little bit closer together. Great. Now put your hands out. All right, great. Now look at me. Great. Now close your eyes just really quick. I just want to test one thing. And I'm just going to do like 5 or 6 things. All these things I'm doing are meaningless.
They've given in to you, to your will.
Right. So now we haven't even started the process. I've got you just to comply with orders on command. So now I'm gonna start the hypnosis process. I'm gonna be like, all right, so go ahead and start taking a deep breath into your abdomen, and now follow my finger. I'm gonna do this kind of little finger thing like this. I'm gonna what's called the upside down T. It's probably the best thing to knock somebody out in public. Where I'm just kind of, if you follow my finger, I'm not gonna do it to you, but we're gonna go this way, back to the center, and then all the way up. So anytime you get those eyes to roll to the center of the forehead, you can feel like if you try to look right here, there's a reflex of almost like kind of sending you back, making you kind of go into hypnosis a tiny bit. So then I'm doing all this stuff and I'm gaining all this compliance. And then I say, all right, remember when you go into hypnosis, you're going to be able to stand and maintain perfect balance. You're going to be able to maintain perfect balance even when you go very, very deep. So what I just set expectancy for what's going to happen. Now I'm saying right when I say sleep, your head's going to droop forward, your body's going to get completely loose, but I don't want that to scare you. So I'm pretending like this is a little safety briefing, but I'm telling you what to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So your head might fall down and get really loose, and your eyes might close. You're going to feel a need for those eyes to close, and that's totally normal. You can just let them close because you'll get even more benefit out of this. And now if you wanted one thing out of hypnosis, I'm one of the top hypnotists in the world, what would you pick? Would you pick more discipline, more confidence, more gratitude? What would you pick?
You're asking me personally?
Yeah.
More discipline.
Okay. So now that you've said, I want more discipline, I'm holding the key to that. Now I've got you excited. Now I'm building your expectancy using your own desires.
Right.
So and I always ask the question, if you could wave a magic wand, what would be the one thing that you could change about yourself or that you would add to your life? So you get people to get excited and kind of get invested in the process. Okay, now remember, as soon as I say the word sleep, everything's going to be fine. You're going to be able to stand and maintain perfect balance, even if your head and the rest of your body just starts to droop and relax. I'm going to be right here with you the entire time. So all I've done is got you to comply a bazillion times, told you exactly what to do, and then told you what's going to happen the moment I say sleep.
Wow.
And the moment I say sleep, I'm going to do a tiny little thing. Are we on camera?
Yes.
This will be on camera?
Yeah.
So stand up really quick. So I'm going to feel the back of your head. So right here is called the occipital protuberance.
Okay.
So if you can imagine this feeling, like just a tiny touch, just like that.
Yeah.
And right when somebody says sleep, and that one little push, right when their eyes are moving upward, and that little push to sleep, that little jerk makes their psychology go, oh shit, something's happening, something's going on.
Interesting.
And then the moment their head goes down, I'm starting to count down from 10 to 1. Why do I count down from 10 to 1? Because that's a countdown. And people think, oh shit, he's counting down. The hypnosis thing is happening.
Right.
So I'm triggering what their societal experiences of what hypnosis has been. And then I do progressive muscle relaxation. All the muscles in your face completely letting go. Those little muscles around your eyes just finally releasing, relaxing, unwinding, completely unraveling, just feeling absolutely perfect as you go even deeper, as you take those deep breaths, just nonstop blather like this.
Right.
So you relax all those muscles, but what you're really doing is getting the body to relax to such a state and getting that person to trust you enough to where their brain goes into theta. That's all it is. Hypnosis is just theta. I'm just getting the brain into a theta wave state. So I'm getting the body to relax. They go into theta. So that's what's happening here. Everybody here has massive compliance. Massive compliance. Right. They've been following him for a while. They've seen thousands of people fall out on stage. So he never needs to tell anybody what's going to happen again because he has this long demonstrated history of bam, I knock my coat and these people go down.
Right.
And now you come up on stage, there's 10,000 people watching you. And it's just you and me, and I've got my little coat. Are you going to be the asshole?
Right.
Or are you going down?
Wow.
That's a tremendous amount of social pressure.
Yes.
But at the same time, they're desiring positive benefit from this, which makes them want to fully let go and completely participate in the entire thing. So there's many different psychological avenues that are happening at the same time. So it's a good thing. Like if they walk out of there and they say that's the best day of my life, whatever they spent in this church was worth it.
It was beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's people that say, oh, he's a con artist or whatever. A psychologist does tricks on you too.
Right.
You know? So maybe people get benefit from it. He may be bilking people for lots of money. I don't know the guy. I don't know anything about this industry.
Right.
But I do know brains. So that's what hypnosis really is. So what I just gave to you, literally someone could take what I just did and go hypnotize a stranger. Exactly with what I just did. All you got to do to wake them up is tell them, I'm going to wake you up. The moment I say 5, you'll be awake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wide awake.
So basically whatever you tell them or suggest to them will happen.
Yeah. Because you're compliance. And at the beginning, I'll often say something like, I've been doing this a long time. I can tell you're in the top 5% of hypnotizability, which we call unconscious power or unconscious connection. And I made those words up just to kind of go along with what a person needs to feel. And I'll say the only thing that you have to do to go into hypnosis is do every single thing that I say. Are you good with that? And I'll be like, yeah. So
they're subconsciously, yeah.
So that does 2 things. Number 1, it gets them to completely agree to let go. When I say let go, they have to let go. Number 2, it gets them to say, yeah, I will do everything you say. So if they say they're not going into hypnosis, then it's their fault because they're just not following instructions.
Right.
Yeah. The first guy who discovered a lot of this stuff was named Franz Mesmer. And that's where the term mesmerized comes from.
Really?
Yeah.
Franz Mesmer.
So he didn't call it hypnotism. He called it animal magnetism. So he believed, and he wasn't a charlatan by any means. He believed that by waving these big water magnets and stuff all around people that he would heal them. But these people had an expectation of being healed, so he started producing results.
Right.
And the body's powerful. They did a study up in, I think it was the University of Montreal in Canada. They took this busted-ass MRI machine with a Bluetooth speaker in it that makes MRI noises, that just makes big machine noises.
Yeah.
And they brought kids in there and told these kids up to the age of like 16 that this machine was special built to cure migraines or dermatitis or eczema or allergies or sleep problems. And it cured them.
That's wild.
It fixed all those things. Even allergies got fixed with this fake MRI with a Bluetooth speaker. Just because there's an expectation of healing.
The brain is such a freaking powerful thing.
It's a powerhouse. And that's why the one thing that pisses me off is when people use the term placebo effect to talk about someone being tricked. Like, that's not what that is.
Right.
The placebo effect is how powerful your brain is, not how gullible.
Right.
It's a measure of power, not stupidity.
Interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you think there's any sort of measurement or any sort of like correlation in people that are affected more by that, like the placebo effect versus people who aren't? Like if you took one group of people and then told them about this MRI thing, how it was going to cure them, and you put them all in there, and the people that were cured, like what is it specifically about their brains that is different, do you think?
We have to factor in 2 things. What if the first group of people had a 22-year-old pimple-faced kid go in there and explain how powerful the MRI is, and the next group had a 6'4", 60-year-old, gray-haired, perfectly well-manicured doctor in a lab coat?
Yeah.
They're going to get different results.
Sure, but what if it was the same doctor though? What if the conditions were similar?
Yeah.
How would you distinguish the different? Like, what would you think it is about those people that gives them different results?
So they're all on the same diet as well?
Yeah, perfectly, exactly same.
Same
exactly
humans.
Same humans.
Okay, so I would say it's their level of suggestibility.
Okay.
Natural suggestibility. So people that had a pretty decent life that weren't mistrusting of adults, especially if we're dealing with kids. You know, the most hypnotizable people I've ever seen are like giant NFL football players and NBA basketball player dudes.
Really?
Huge alpha male type guys. Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I think they have a superior ability to visualize. And that's what makes it, I'm not even making this up. That's what makes a good CEO, a good leader, is can they visualize outcomes that they want. So when I see my one-on-one clients, we spend 7 hours teaching them to visualize. And I'm saying I'm going to spend an hour with you as my client with that pen right there, and you're going to spend 2 minutes memorizing every detail. And then you're going to take 30 seconds to close your eyes and rebuild it in your head. Then I'm going to give you 2 seconds. Open your eyes, pick up a detail that you missed. Close your eyes, rebuild it again.
Wow.
Again, hundreds of times. And then I'll increase the complexity with something that has more reflections, more details. Then we'll train your brain to visualize better and better and better. And that's a huge problem that most people can't visualize. Or they're visualizing negative stuff by default just because that's what mammals do.
Is this similar to like people when they talk about having a photographic memory? Is this something that you can kind of like train to do?
Yeah, it's sort of.
Get better at it by practicing it?
This would not be a memory training tool. This would be a visualizing in the moment tool.
Yeah, but it's kind of memory, right? If I'm looking at this and I'm looking at all of it and trying to then close my eyes and then reconstruct it it's kind of like memory. And then like people that have photographic memories, they just have this incredible memory, like to be able to pick out certain details of things and things that happened on certain days and names of people. And it's like, I wonder if that's like an inherent thing or if that's something that can be supported or like built up like a muscle from doing things like that.
I would lean towards that being a physiological connectivity issue.
Yeah.
But so the reason I want them to be hyper visualizers is because when I hypnotize them, they have a wildly different experience because inside my client's head, I build a medical laboratory in their head where they can give themselves injections, do body scans. I had a client just 2 years ago. We built this like an MRI machine scanner inside of her medical lab, which all my clients have these little doorways and stuff where they can do cool stuff with their head and their brain. I do this with professional athletes and boxers. We're doing F1 racers.
Wow.
So the Formula One guys. So in the med lab, this woman was scanning her body. And so I have everybody like you build the scanner, lay on the bed, let's turn it on with your hand. There's a control down here. And she scanned her body and said there's like this white glow. She didn't tell me until after she woke up, out of trance. She said there's this white like glowing ball down here. Ovarian teratoma. Big ass tumor.
Really?
Yeah. And she found it on her own body scan in her head. So there's something to it, man.
That's wild.
I don't think we give our brains enough credit. They're really powerful. And Darren Brown, do you know who he is?
No.
He's a British guy. He Miracles for Sale, I think it was called. He did a whole documentary about this where he pretended to be a religious person and he healed people using the same techniques, but he's a hypnotist. So he pretended to be religious and did a kind of a tour of curing people and stuff and had similar, exact same results pretty much.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Truly fascinating. But that visualizing is so powerful. And I hate to, have you ever seen the Blue Angels do a flight briefing?
No.
This is going to change your life.
Let's find it.
Type in Blue Angels flight. There we go. Turn that shit up.
Forecast weather winds 250 at 610 miles viz. Few at 25,000. Altimeter 3002 corrected to 2999.
Astronauts will do this too.
A little pull.
Everyone's eyes are closed. See that throttle hand?
Vertical 5-5.
Yeah.
Easing mode. Diamond stinger.
Right, jump.
Adding power. The soul's be in from the right for the tuck of a roll. The diamond will be in from behind the crowd for the low break cross. Ease the pull.
There you
rolling out the loop break cross.
Rocket jumps. Tootsie. Take it in.
Up we go.
It's fucking insane. Amazing.
Vertical 5-5.
See him pulling his feet off the rudder?
Yeah.
Smoke up, pull.
The smallest movements.
Up we go. Vertical, 4-5. Horizon, 7-5, easing power, idle. Ready, roll hat. On. Smoke up, push. Airspeed call. All right, Diamond Souls, Comcar, Tower, Burner. Let's have a go.
About that, man.
That is intense.
Heavy.
Holy smokes. So
Best in the
they're
world.
sitting there visualizing their whole entire flight path.
Yeah. Every single muscle movement.
My God. I mean, like, yeah, the smallest little wrong move with the wrist could mean death.
Yeah.
In that situation when they're flying wing to wing at that speed.
Yeah. And they fly with a 40-pound spring.
What's that mean?
So your main flight stick, right, is pulled back with a 40-pound spring. So you're always at 40 pounds of pressure when you're flying only that plane, the Blue Angel planes.
Right.
I think the F-18s are 12-pound spring. When you have any Tier 1 unit, like a SEAL team unit,
Yeah.
like maybe Team 6 Delta dudes, you'll see mission rehearsals that look exactly like this.
Really?
Everybody's going through that same process, man. And these are the best in the world, and they are visualizing success. People say to do this, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I like to visualize. I have a vision board that I keep on my Walmart digital picture frame on my desk." That's fucking visualizing right there.
I mean, it's real. It's fucking real, man.
Yeah, I was tempted to make like a huge video, a YouTube video on that, and just to talk about how important it is.
Yeah.
And my kids, I think the first time we talked on the phone, I had Miss Rachel in the background. You remember that?
You did have Miss Rachel in the background.
And you were like, "Oh, I know Miss Rachel."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So the Sticky Bubblegum song, which I'm sure.
Sticky bubble gum.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a video on YouTube about how important that visualization is. And my kids, I made them a checklist one time. Like, here's your perfect checklist of every day. I'm up at this time. I brush my teeth before this time. I feed the dogs. I take care of the stuff I'm supposed to do. My assignments are turned in before 11, blah, blah, blah. Here's all the stuff you need to do.
Yeah.
And they hate having a checklist. They're like, "Oh, we want to be treated like adults." And I was like, "Do you?
Watch this video.
Do you want to be treated like an adult?" I was like, "You know who uses checklists and never goes away from a checklist? Surgeons, pilots, astronauts.
Right.
Checklist."
Right.
So, and I think that helped to reframe, what that was. And I said, I have a checklist every day. You can look at my calendar. I have a checklist every single day of my life. I work from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day.
Do you really?
I do. This last 2 days, the first 2 days I've taken off in 6 years, and that's including Christmas, birthdays. I haven't taken a day off, but my company's finally at a place where I'm making money, making very decent money, and I can just start letting go of that steering wheel a little bit more. And I hired a CEO, which is the best decision I've ever made in my lifetime. So I'm not a business person. I'm a creator. I'm supposed to be an artist, just making stuff. And being a business person killed me. And it ruined me.
Yeah.
And that's,
there's not much creativity in it, at least from my perspective, from my point of view. It's boring.
Yeah, and
worrying about numbers.
As an entrepreneur, which you are, the biggest lesson I learned in my life was that I had a tendency to look out in the crowd and find other entrepreneur-minded people to hire, which was so dumb. You got to hire a business person. You cannot hire an entrepreneur. You got to hire somebody that's Excel spreadsheet oriented, EBITDA oriented, earnings, all of that. But for anybody that's out there, that's an entrepreneur. Hire a business person. Hire somebody just slightly autistic and obsessed with those spreadsheets and numbers and data.
Right.
That's it.
It's wild shit, man. Well, thanks again. This was very fun. I learned a lot. A lot to process.
It is.
Thanks for doing this, man. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Me too.
tell people where they can buy your books, get in touch with you.
Yeah, we got to hold it up.
Hold it up.
Doing an
Look
ad.
at that. The Behavioral Ops Manual.
Amazon.com.
Look at that. Look how thick that motherfucker is.
It's like a little phone book.
It really is like a little phone book.
It's the textbook now for NCI.
Frick.
The system NCI. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it, man. We'll link everything below.
All right.
Good night, world.